A few days later, a Navy ship was sent to Laboratory 8, and Kizaru was the one who appeared. Due to his acquaintance with Dr. Vega Punk, he was sent by the government to talk. Upon entering, he immediately put down his communication device. The doctor boasted that he would create a new future for humanity in this place. His friend saw that Vegapunk was not at all familiar with the laboratory, to the point that he was constantly monitored by the government but still hadn't realized it. After pointing to the ceiling, the doctor finally discovered the device. He sighed and asked his friend what he was doing there. Kizaru said that all conversations here were being monitored, and Vegapunk's negotiations with pirates were unacceptable. The doctor angrily pointed and said he hated Kizaru's attitude. Kizaru didn't know what to say, only that he was there for work and couldn't disobey orders. Immediately after, the call connected with Saint Saturn on the other end of the line. He said that saving a child had nothing to do with the current work, even if Bartholomew Kuma was a perfect person to base clones on. The world government would never accept that a notorious pirate, with a 296 million berry bounty, would become the face of the Navy in the future. If the Navy used a clone of such a person, they would lose all face. The doctor, hearing this, thought that science didn't need to care about face at all. If the cloning project succeeded, they would save countless lives. Saturn admitted that if it succeeded, the government would gain immense power. So he wanted to propose 3 additional conditions for Kuma before agreeing to treat Bonney. First, Bartholomew Kuma would have to become one of the Shichibukai, meaning he would have to serve the government from now on. The reason was that recently, a rookie pirate named Ace had defeated a Shichibukai, so they needed someone to replace him. The pirate era had begun to stir, and Kuma was the perfect candidate. As for the second condition, he would have to become a weapon for the Navy, meaning Kuma's body would be modified to become a machine. Because as a Shichibukai, with Kuma's special great power, he would become a great threat to pirates. This would greatly help the Navy, and Kizaru also supported it. But Dr. Vegapunk could not accept it. Saturn then continued, saying that since Kuma was a former member of the Revolutionary Army, he didn't want him to use his power against the world government. Therefore, the third condition was to give up all his mind and freedom. Hearing this, the old man immediately reacted strongly, because that would be no different from a death sentence waiting for Kuma. He asked Saturn if the other Shichibukai were not obeying him, that he had to go to this extent. A robot without will is just an empty shell, and he himself didn't want to become a murderer at all. The other party didn't give Vegapunk a choice. They called him the Navy's scientist. The 3 conditions above were the price to save the life of a criminal's daughter. If they didn't accept, the government had no obligation to spend a huge amount of money to operate on an unknown child. Bonney outside was still happily running around. For the doctor, performing surgery based on those 3 conditions was inhumane. With no other choice, Kuma made the final decision, which was to agree to follow Saturn's words. He asked Vegapunk to perform the surgery to save his daughter. At first, he thought the government would push the 2 father and daughter to the point where they couldn't be saved. But if Bonney lived, it wouldn't matter if he sacrificed his own life. He smiled through his tears, thinking Bonney was about to be saved. This was truly painful for Vegapunk, witnessing the father who loved his daughter so much wanting to sacrifice everything for her. The doctor couldn't hold back his tears and cried along. Outside, Sentomaru was talking to someone when he saw Bonney crawl over. The mischievous girl constantly teasing him. The body modification and complete treatment for Bonney were estimated to take about 6 months. After that, she would need another year before she could go outside. In total, it would be 1.5 years. As for Kuma's modification work, it would take at least 2 years to complete. Hearing this, he was very happy that Bonney could recover before her 10th birthday. Saint Saturn directly stated that his daughter was just a hostage, to ensure that Kuma would always obey. He wanted to send people to supervise Bonney after the surgery, and only when Kuma was no longer human would Bonney truly gain freedom. This meant that the father and daughter would not be able to meet after Bonney recovered. From now on, his job would be to serve the government as a Shichibukai. If he violated the agreement during this time, Bonney would be taken away as a slave. Kuma still agreed after hearing this, only asking to keep the secret about the origin of the disease and the fact that she was a hostage. Additionally, after the surgery, instead of keeping Bonney in this cold place, he wanted to take his young daughter back to the church in the Sorbet Kingdom, where she grew up. If he did so, he promised to absolutely obey and not visit Bonney again. Saturn then accepted. thinking that the next 2 years would be very interesting to watch. Outside, Bonney ran to call her dad, saying she was very well behaved, and that they would have to stay here for at least 6 months for the surgery. Kuma lied that he also had a disease and would need to stay for further examination. The father and daughter got acquainted with Sentomaru and asked him to play with Bonney during this time. Inside the laboratory, Dr. Vega Punk was trying to write down all his ideas for Kuma's modification, to the point where others had to help collect his notes. From here, Vega Punk also implemented the idea of creating copies of himself to reduce his workload. In the following period, Bonney underwent continuous surgeries, which made her bored. Fortunately, Sentomaru was there to play with her, even though he wasn't very free. But because he was so fond of this girl, the young man still agreed. As for Kuma, he was also beginning the process of transforming into a cyborg. Although it was quite painful, he was very happy when he saw his daughter laughing and playing happily. Sentomaru complained about how Kuma taught his daughter, always making him act as a horse for her to ride. That day, Bonney drew a picture for her dad as a gift. The doctor saw the scene of the father and daughter like this and didn't dare to wake them. Time passed peacefully. Everyone in the laboratory treated them very well. Even someone as difficult as Kizaru joined the party. Everyone learned to dance the Nika dance with Kuma happily. And after 6 months of treatment, Bonney's scale disease had made good progress. According to the assessment, it would be completely cured in just 1 more year. The girl even asked the doctor if she could visit him here after she recovered. Immediately after, the father and daughter returned to the church as planned. The old folks were overjoyed when they saw their granddaughter return. Knowing that Kuma would have to leave again, they agreed to take care of Bonney as usual. He said that he was a pirate and could not stay here for long. He wanted his daughter to write letters often to communicate, and promised that the next time he returned, the father and daughter would watch the sea together. At this time, Alpha, a government intelligence agent, was present. They would be the ones controlling Bonney during this time. They even built a base right next to the church, no different from a prison. She crushed a stone to warn Kuma that if he dared to disobey, Bonney would suffer a similar fate. The father and daughter had to say goodbye immediately after. He secretly wished that if his daughter fully recovered, they could meet one last time. Bonney, completely unaware, happily said goodbye, not knowing that this was the last time the father and daughter would meet. Kuma left with tears, and in the following period, the news of the tyrant Bartholomew Kuma joining the Shichibukai spread everywhere. Shaking the pirate world, those like Doflamingo felt extremely interested after hearing this news. They thought another villain had appeared. Robin was also quite curious about this person, and when she asked Crocodile what he thought, he didn't care, as long as it didn't affect him. It was fine. Besides them, many others were interested in Kuma. Among them was Ace, who had previously defeated a Shichibukai. He felt happy for Jinbei, but Jinbei blamed him for defeating Hanafuda, which led to everything turning out this way. The pirate world had begun to change since then. Boa Hancock had also just read about this information, but she didn't care. Only Kuma's former comrades in the Revolutionary Army didn't understand what had happened. They didn't believe their friend would become an enemy in the near future. As for Kuma, he was leisurely sailing the seas at this time, occasionally writing letters to his daughter to let her know he was fine. The place Kuma arrived at today was the East Blue, where Luffy was playing with a tiger. When Luffy was 16 years old, he always trained alone in the mountains to set sail and achieve his dream of becoming the Pirate King. Kuma also frequently visited the place and witnessed the main character destroying rocks by stretching his leg. Luffy was extremely confident in his abilities, even showing off to the animals he had beaten, scaring them. The young man thought that with his current strength, he could defeat anyone, even Ace couldn't beat him. Kuma watched from behind and recalled the old days when he was active in the Revolutionary Army. Dragon occasionally visited this sea. Besides, he knew a lot about this country, even a small village. He also frequently observed a special boy, which made Kuma very curious. Dragon, hearing this, turned away displeased and threatened. "I'll deal with you right now if you keep talking about this." The reason is very simple. Children are a parent's weakness. Understanding the issue, Kuma apologized and swore he would not mention it again. Back to reality. Luffy was still showing off his abilities to the forest animals. He really wanted to become a pirate, form his own crew, and search for treasure. Seeing the two poor, scared animals, the main character also said that he wouldn't eat cowards, so they shouldn't worry. At this moment, a bell suddenly rang from Kuma's side, alerting Luffy. However, When he ran to check, he found no one. Only an indescribable chill down his spine remained. The main character thought that perhaps it was a powerful beast like the Lord of the Forest that was here. To find it, Luffy took a running start and destroyed the rock behind him, but still saw nothing. Meanwhile, Kuma received news that pirates were attacking at sea and had to be eliminated. With his abilities, he teleported directly to the scene. The people on the ship said that the pirates had robbed all their goods. Kuma also took the injured to a nearby hospital, ignoring the command to quickly eliminate the pirates. This man still did what he considered right. By evening, Bartholomew Kuma also found the pirate ship that had attacked earlier. Of course, these people knew about the reputation of one of the Shichibukai. The captain immediately ordered them to quickly return the goods to be spared. This was how this man operated. Looking up at the sky, Kuma remembered his daughter. Although he wrote many letters to Bonney, he had not received any reply since they parted ways. This world is full of beautiful scenery. Father wants to see your face light up when you see these sights someday. Back in the Sorbet Kingdom, Bonney checked the mailbox every day but received nothing. Everyone thought that Kuma was probably busy with work and couldn't send letters home. But the girl refused to believe it because her father had promised her that he would write many letters. Queen Connie advised the child to wait patiently, and the letters would be sent soon. Outside, Alpha had found today's newspaper, but it also contained a letter that Kuma had sent. She knew this trick from the beginning, so she always prevented the father and daughter from communicating. According to her calculations, about 10 letters from Kuma would be sent every month, but all of them had been torn up by Alpha, preventing Bonney from reading them. Inside the house, Bonney was extremely upset. To vent her anger, she transformed herself into an adult and demanded to fight. Outside, Alpha was also approaching, making Queen Connie worried. She asked the girl to transform back immediately to hide her devil fruit ability. The other woman looked surprised after seeing Bonney. However, the old woman distracted her, allowing her granddaughter to successfully shrink back and hide. When Alpha looked again, she thought she had been hallucinating, so she didn't suspect anything. She was also the one who gave the girl medicine every day. Others asked Queen Connie why she had to hide her granddaughter's ability. And they knew. A wise wolf needs to know how to hide its fangs. A scene changed to some time later at Dr. Vegapunk's laboratory. Today, Stussy stopped by to check on Kuma's condition. At present, this laboratory has been upgraded and is about to be lifted into the sky by Vegapunk along with his brain. She also complimented his new hairstyle, saying it looked very good. The doctor happily replied that he felt much lighter now, unlike before. As for Kuma, he was about to lose all will and become a true machine. She asked who would suffer more, a human without free will, or a clone with free will. Hearing this, the other friend just smiled without saying a word. Vegapunk also stopped her from saying more because she was still human. He also gave an example for Kuma. If ordered to kill a child, would he be able to do it? In this research, losing free will means losing all memories and emotions from being human. After checking everything, the three continued talking. Stussy wanted to know how Kuma felt. He must have been very worried about losing everything. This father still tried to appear strong, but he couldn't fool her. Stussy thought that losing all memories and emotions was something no one could accept, especially when he still had someone he cared about. Dr. Vegapunk really wanted to help, saying he would try to maintain his consciousness at a minimum level so he could fulfill his wishes. The remaining time was 1 year from now. Hearing this, Kuma continued to write letters to send to his daughter. In the coming year, he would write down all his lifelong emotions. Hearing this, Stussy felt quite happy. Bonney was almost 9 years old, so this was an early birthday greeting letter. Although he didn't know if it would reach Bonney. The scene shifts to the girl's birthday. Everyone at the church held a grand party to celebrate. Her favorite food was a special pizza made by Granny Connie. Everyone ate happily until evening. Unfortunately, no letter had arrived yet, making the child sad. She remembered what her grandmother had said, that she was always looking forward to it. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. Bonney blamed her father for promising to send her letters but none had appeared. The scene shifts to the Revolutionary Army headquarters. Dragon had just received news that Kuma had come to help again and seemed surprised. Thanks to this, their side escaped a dangerous situation. However, that comrade left immediately without saying anything. Hearing this, Dragon ordered them not to follow him, because that's what Kuma wanted. Just leave him be. He must have some unspoken reason. In the following period, Bonney finally recovered and could go out like a normal person. She ran to celebrate with the old woman when the stones on her face had completely disappeared. After asking to go out and play, Alpha stopped her, saying they were assigned to take care of her until her 10th birthday. The girl thought she was lying because Dr. Vegapunk had said she would recover within a year. She wanted them not to interfere anymore and ran outside, but was pulled back. The opponent did not hesitate to use force to warn her, forcing Bonney to give up. Later, Granny Connie said that those people were government intelligence agents. The day before, she had gone drinking and talked about Bonney's recovery. She didn't know the motive of those people. However, she had a bad feeling because Alpha wanted to keep the healthy child at home for another 6 months. It was also strange that Kuma hadn't sent any letters home. This could very well be related. To help her granddaughter, she talked to the Gyogyo group. She wanted Bonney to set sail and find her father, by transforming into an old woman so she could fool the government people. Just like that, as soon as she finished packing, the girl successfully disguised herself as Granny Connie and escaped. Kuma's childhood friends were not ordinary fishermen. Even local pirates and sea monsters were terrified of those people, so Bonney could completely trust them and set sail safely. After seeing the outside world, she was overjoyed, beginning to feel the warm winds and sunshine and everything around her. Witnessing the child they loved gain freedom, everyone in the church showed happiness. At this moment, Alpha felt something was wrong and immediately checked, but unfortunately only found Queen Connie there. The little girl had already run to the harbor with Uncle Gyogyo. They had prepared a pizza-shaped ship as a gift for their granddaughter. As for Alpha, after being tricked, she also showed anger, and immediately ran to the harbor to catch Bonney and bring her back. Although the ship had accelerated to its maximum speed, Alpha's ability was too great, pushing Bonney into a situation where she would lose her desire to reunite with her father. Bonney pushed herself to be stronger. Remembering her father's teachings about Nika, she transformed herself to become huge. Her arm then swelled, astonishing Alpha. It turned out that Kuma had previously told Bonney that Nika had a rubber-like body and fought in the way he liked. Just like that, Bonney unleashed a powerful punch directly at the opponent's face. To decide her own future just like Nika. News of Bonney's escape was reported to the government, and she eventually became a notorious pirate on par with Luffy. About a year later, Bonney set out to find her father. When her name was called, she became annoyed and demanded to be called captain because she was no longer a child. The uncles were very easygoing and followed her wishes. Seeing the island ahead, they guessed that Kuma was there, and Bonney was overjoyed. Although there were quite a few marines there, the crew still plunged into battle. By this time, Bonney had mastered her devil fruit ability. If she touched someone, that person would immediately turn into an old man or a child. Everyone called Kuma's name in unison but was avoided. Although he really wanted to talk to his daughter, he was afraid that once he met her, he would not be able to bear to leave her. So, he could only silently apologize to his daughter, annoyed that she still couldn't find her father. Bonney was advised by the crew to calm down, because now that they were pirates, they could go everywhere to find him. She said that she also needed to find Nika, because if she told her father that she had met Nika, he would be very happy. At the same time, Luffy, after setting sail, began to make a name for himself. He had defeated the Straw Hat Pirates and became famous in the pirate world with a bounty of 30 million belly. At the Revolutionary Army headquarters, Dragon, after learning that his son had become a pirate, Dragon was a little worried. Ace was also showing off his brother's achievements to Jinbei, surprising his friend. Kuma was also following Luffy and Bonney's journey. She took the form of a little girl but still had the soul of a child, asking the crew to only steal from bad guys. In addition, she also started wearing lipstick to look like an adult. Bonney's next goal was to become famous in the pirate world. That way, her father would pay attention to this daughter. In the new world, Kuma had returned to meet Dr. Vegapunk. This was also when the clone warriors based on Kuma were born. The body transformation process went quite smoothly. The doctor asked about the child who dared to declare war on the world government and was answered. That was Dragon's son. Even more coincidentally, Luffy fought against the government with his rubber ability. Just like the main character was exactly Nika, the hero in his imagination. The next time the Straw Hat Pirates defeated Gecko Moria, Kuma appeared on the government's orders. He asked the other crew members to surrender Luffy's life to be spared. However, no one wanted to betray their comrades, especially the captain, so Kuma attacked everyone and was stopped by Zoro. He wanted to use his life to exchange for Luffy's life. He also declared that his captain would become the Pirate King. It was said that Kuma agreed to push all the pain in the main character's body out. If Zoro wanted to endure it all, he would spare him. According to calculations, this pain was enough to make him faint. But Zoro was able to endure all the pain, which made Kuma extremely admire him. He thought that Luffy had good comrades, truly worthy of being Dragon's son. Time passed. Ace was captured by the Marines and was about to be executed. All the 7 warlords were summoned to prepare to fight the Whitebeard pirates. At the Sabaody archipelago, Bonney's pirate crew was eating and drinking. Because there wasn't much time left, Kuma could only watch his daughter from afar. He was also happy that she had become a strong pirate. Suddenly at this time, it was heard that a pirate had defeated a celestial dragon. Out of curiosity, Kuma secretly observed and discovered that it was the Straw Hat Pirates. Witnessing them standing up to save the fishman slave, Kuma was extremely moved. Images from the past appeared. What Luffy was doing was something no one dared to do. Moved by those scenes, when the Straw Hat Pirates were in danger, Kuma helped them, also silently apologizing to Dragon and Ivankov when he decided to disappear without a word. As a mark of his existence, before losing his memory, he wanted to entrust hope to the younger generation. So he took all the members of the Straw Hat Pirates everywhere to train. At that time, Luffy didn't understand anything, thinking that he had lost all his crewmates. So he cried a lot. The new world was very harsh. Kuma understood that the Straw Hat Pirates were still too weak. They had to try to train for a while, and one day they would be the saviors of the world. At the end of the Sabaody archipelago incident, Dr. Vega Punk was ordered to erase Kuma's memories immediately. He still tried to help his friend, but Saint Saturn disagreed, fearing that if Kuma caused trouble, no one would be strong enough to stop him. Still considering Dr. Vega Punk as a normal scientist hired by the government, Vega Punk only asked to keep a part of Kuma's memories, but was still refused. The order was to turn that person into a completely obedient machine, leaving no free will. Saturn himself was also a scientist, so he advised the doctor not to think that he could outsmart him. Sadly, he went to see his friend and was encouraged by Kuma. It seemed that this man had heard their conversation. Finally, the day he lost all his freedom arrived. Although they had only known each other for 2 years, they had many good memories. The first mission the doctor put into Kuma's head was to fight the Whitebeard pirates under the government's orders. After this mission, Kuma also wanted his friend to program another mission. That was to protect the ship for the Straw Hat Pirates until a crew member returned. That was their home and their future. Although he couldn't witness Luffy's growth, he put all his hope in the protagonist. He made his heart pound. Although Nika was just a legend, that legend had begun to come true. If there was a hero who could change the world, it had to be Luffy. Vegapunk agreed when he heard that. The last agreement between them was to review Kuma's memories. With his devil fruit ability, he left a copy outside. If you touch it, it will disappear, but it will help someone see all the memories inside. Vegapunk had a remote viewing device so he could see it without touching it. In his last moments, Kuma looked back at his life. From being a child living with his parents, to becoming a slave and losing all his loved ones. Everything was like a sad movie. When he met Ginny, he couldn't bring her happiness. And then major events began to happen. Ginny passed away forever due to illness. Kuma then became a father to take care of Bonney. But in the end he still couldn't have eternal happiness with his daughter. This man's life had gone through countless events. Every memory came back to his mind. Kuma himself always wanted to be a hero like Nika, who could save the suffering and oppressed. He also thanked his friends for appearing to save his soul. At this moment, Dr. Vegapunk also shed tears, but still had to carry out the government's orders. Kuma's death saddened his loved ones, calling this friend Bonney's hero and everyone's hero. Hearing that, Kuma said his last thanks. And immediately after, all his memories and free will disappeared. All that was left was a robot body that could only obey orders. Vegapunk cried in pain, and was asked to tell Bonney after meeting her. Happy 10th birthday. Bonney witnessed everything her father went through and could only cry. After reviewing all the memories her father left behind, Bonney emerged in a much better mood, even though she had cried a lot before. Dr. Vegapunk also breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that he had fulfilled his promise to Kuma. The girl was touched by what her father had to go through. So she rushed to hug Vegapunk's body, still in the form of a 10-year-old child, and apologized to him. After calming down, Dr. Vegapunk took out the 10th birthday gift Kuma had left. And knowing this, The girl was overjoyed to receive it. This necklace was shaped like the sun and was a symbol that she and her father loved very much. Bonney talked about the Sun God Nika, while Dr. Vega Punk thought it was just a good luck charm. He also talked about Luffy, surprised that he had become such a strong warrior. Bonney also knew that the main character was the son of her father's best friend. And fate was truly strange to bring them both here. After Bonney entered that room, Luffy's group also rescued him. Too many things had happened here. So they sat and recounted what had just happened. And he also apologized to his granddaughter, saying that he was ultimately just a scientist hired by the government. Returning to the present, Saint Saturn was still holding Bonney's small body. And she believed that everything was this guy's fault. The other members below gradually lost feeling and couldn't move. They wondered what the hell was happening and learned it was related to Saint Saturn's devil fruit ability. Luffy, lying nearby, also woke up, demanding something to eat to regain his strength, begging someone to bring him food. Those involved were now all captured, and Bonney was informed by the opponent that Kuma had died. The scene shifted to the Revolutionary Army. Recently, too much news had occurred, causing people to worry. Ivankov also asked if Dragon was in a bad mood, while he wondered if Kuma was controlled by the remaining power. Where his friend was now. Ivankov thought that if it were him, he would rush straight into Mary Joie's without hesitation. But not for Kuma. He believed that his friend would go to meet the person he loved most. As for Bonney, Saturn declared that he would let the two father and daughter meet in hell. Surrounded by marine soldiers, her allies were all restrained and unable to move. The girl angrily wanted to struggle to escape by activating her devil fruit ability. At least she wanted to drag him down with her and not die alone. Her arm then swelled up like Nika's form, surprising everyone. For Bonney's future, she punched the opponent's face extremely hard. But nothing happened. Saturn also looked disdainful and asked if that was really a punch. The little girl felt her body weakening and wondered why. When Saint Saturn explained it, he continued to squeeze Bonney's body and talked about her knowing Nika's name but not truly knowing what it was. The old man secretly thought that the girl had not yet realized the connection between Nika and Luffy's white form. Otherwise, Bonney could have done something already. Below, the main character had now been given food, and he replenished his energy in front of the Marines, who understood nothing. When asked about this, they also didn't know where the food came from. Saint Saturn demanded that Luffy be immediately restrained with sea stone cuffs. Above, Bonney continued to try to activate her devil fruit ability to weaken the opponent. But it had no effect. His age could not be controlled like ordinary people. To answer this question, Saturn revealed that the real reason her power was weakening was because he was the one who granted her that ability. Hearing this, Bonney was very shocked. But for the old man, this was just an experiment to see if he could transfer power from a devil fruit to a newborn who couldn't eat yet. By extraction. And so Bonney was chosen. The experiment was successful. But the devil fruit itself was useless. It only allowed her to transform into possible future versions of herself. But the more she knew about reality, the more limited this ability became. When asked about Nika, Bonney confirmed that the sun god was real. Ever since my father was turned into a cyborg to serve you, I have always hoped to find Nika, hoping that person would save my father. However, Saturn believed that her weakening was proof that she was starting to believe Nika didn't exist. Speaking so truthfully that she couldn't argue back. He laughed when Kuma also believed in the Buccaneer tribe's legend. Kuma had also previously spoken about wanting to become Nika to help others. He himself was the one who conducted drug experiments on her mother. Ginny was the 8th wife of someone from the Holy Land. But those blue spots appeared. So the experiment was considered a failure. At this moment, Bonney remembered her father's image, her heart pounding as she learned truths she had never heard. Saturn found it interesting that even though the experiment with Ginny failed, the disease was inherited by Bonney. Outside the island, an explosion occurred. Someone had just landed at extremely high speed. The poor girl began to cry for her fate, after learning that he was the one who caused all the suffering for her mother. Bonney was very angry. Dr. Vegapunk was also angry when he learned that the disease his granddaughter suffered from was caused by Saturn, because of the sapphire scale disease. Their whole family had suffered. Kuma also had to sacrifice himself for it. And after all, it was all his plan. He knew from the beginning yet offered to turn Kuma into a cyborg so his daughter could live. The other party told Vegapunk to put himself in his shoes. To him, they were all insects. Who would care about the feelings of insects? At this moment, the person who appeared outside was Kuma, by some miracle. He wanted to come here to save Bonney. Explosions occurred one after another, making it impossible for the Marines to resist. The news of Bartholomew Kuma's appearance surprised everyone. Vegapunk also didn't know how his friend could get here. Saturn also didn't believe this. Bonney couldn't stop crying. She was extremely scared and couldn't say a word. The Marines also tried to shoot to stop Kuma's advance. But with his cyborg body, he continued to stand up. Having lost all will to fight, Bonney thought to herself, perhaps now if I die, everything will be better. She cried out in despair, making those below heartbroken. Her cries seemed to urge Kuma on more strongly. Saturn then ordered to shoot her head. But before he could do anything, Kuma shot forward, successfully freeing his daughter. The old man intended to use his foot to end everything. But Kuma used his body to shield her. When his daughter opened her eyes, she found herself in her father's palm. They hugged each other, but Kuma couldn't say a word, looking at Bonney. Kuma knew what to do, directly confront Saint Saturn. The other party was surprised, not understanding why it turned out this way. Because Kuma should have died. Bonney then transformed back into her small form, making her father even angrier. Sad memories flooded back. His daughter burst into tears. Seemingly a few days after being rescued by the Revolutionary Army, Saint Saturn had pressed the self-destruct button to destroy Kuma. So he was sure that he was dead. But he didn't understand why he appeared now. With his power, Kuma strengthened his arm, then grabbed his opponent's beard and punched him directly in the face with hatred for what he had done to his family. The old man was blown away to everyone's surprise. Having taken a powerful blow from Kuma, Saint Saturn was severely injured and unable to get up immediately. The Marines were extremely worried about his safety and couldn't believe that Kuma had confronted one of the 5 most powerful people in the world. This was an unprecedented crime. But for Kuma, it no longer mattered. At this moment, all he wanted was to protect his daughter. His body, heavily injured, then collapsed from exhaustion, taking advantage of the Marines rushing to rescue Saint Saturn, who was crushed under the rubble. The others were now able to move normally again. Sanji quickly ran to Bonney to check if she was injured anywhere. Frankie said this was their chance, so they had to quickly get her onto the ship and escape. Atlas said she would take Kuma with them, but the very next second, they had to stop. Hearing Bonney's cries, her father, though tired, still managed to go over and comfort her. Witnessing this, Dr. Vegapunk wondered what had happened. According to theory, Kuma no longer had any memories. Yet, in his eyes, he still remembered Bonney. Slowly walking with a heavy body, he reached out and embraced his little daughter. Thanks to this, Bonney stopped crying and called out, "Dad." Seeing this scene, everyone was moved to tears. It had been too long since they had hugged like this. Vegapunk then recalled that he had not installed a bomb in Kuma's body as instructed by the government. He knew that if he did, they would use his friend as a suicide weapon. But in the end, he still had to follow the government's instructions. He installed a complete shutdown button inside Kuma. Yet his friend was still alive and here, protecting his beloved daughter. This left Saturn utterly astonished and unable to react, as he was the one who pressed the self-destruct button to deactivate Kuma. Somehow, that father still retained his own will. There was no reason for Kuma to act like this. He even flew here himself to find Bonney. Scientifically, it was completely inexplicable. Vegapunk then realized that the cause might be the special bloodline of the Buccaneers. Nearby, Admiral Kizaru was still sitting in one place, not acting. Sentomaru was also very happy to know that Kuma had come to save his daughter. The confusing thing was that Luffy had disappeared without a trace. The Marines were extremely worried and didn't know how to report it. At this moment, Bonney happily touched her father's mechanical body, saying thank you, and also revealed that she had seen all of his memories, from when Kuma was born and lived with his family, until they were enslaved by the celestial dragons. Kuma also began to remember everything, from the time his father told him his mother had gone to heaven, and how both father and son were in immense pain and could only cry. Then came the escape from hell at God Valley with Ivankov and Ginny. when they successfully created a miracle, saving all slaves from their death sentences. And then the memory of Bonney being brought to him to care for. Gradually, his daughter grew up, and the two of them made a promise to explore the world together. And if they reached the Sky Island, they could find Nika. This was what Bonney was looking forward to. And when she turned 19, she wanted to go to Fishman Island. The picture Bonney drew for Kuma later became his symbolic flag. Looking at it, this father remembered his little daughter. Their time in Dr. Vegapunk's research lab was also very happy. Occasionally, they would all sit and eat pizza together. Kuma had once thanked Bonney for being born into this world. Now, recalling those memories, both father and daughter were very happy. The little girl also praised her father as an incredibly wonderful person. These words made Kuma remember Ginny's image when she was young. Bonney's mother always acted strong to protect Kuma. Unfortunately, this couple could not be together, even though they both loved each other very much. When Bonney saw that part, she knew how much her father had to sacrifice to protect her and her mother. She was very happy to know that he had written many letters to her during their time apart. Even though she only recently read them through her father's memories, she was very happy. This father always wanted his daughter to see the beautiful scenery in real life, not just through books. And finally, there was the message that he loved her. The time spent in the research lab with Vegapunk was also very interesting. So he invited Bonney to come there for an adventure once she recovered. In the 2 years before he became a cyborg, Kuma tried to go to all the distant places in the world to explore. Even if everyone called him a tyrant, Bonney still loved her father very much. And he was the kindest and most wonderful person in the world. The Marines were currently gathering forces to rescue Saint Saturn, and immediately after, his power erupted, blowing everyone away. He was extremely angry at being punched by Kuma. And Sanji's group was worried because they thought they had already defeated him. The opponent then jumped out of the rubble with serious injuries. And Frankie was surprised that Kuma's attack was effective. Saturn asked Vegapunk what was going on. Had he secretly influenced Kuma's body? The doctor didn't know how to explain it, saying it was the power of love. The opponent heard this and considered it a bug. The dark power then helped him regenerate his body as if nothing had happened. Facing an enemy of this caliber made Sanji worried. But as soon as the opponent targeted Kuma, he rushed out to help. The Straw Hat Pirates had been helped a lot by Kuma, so this was the time to repay him. Frankie was about to fire a laser when Admiral Kizaru intervened. He praised them for developing so much and wanted to see if that growth could stop him. Although Frankie managed to shoot through Saturn, he was also defeated. Bonney ran over and asked the doctor to save her father because he couldn't move right now. Vegapunk asked Atlas to carry their friend away while they stayed to hold them off. Sanji and Frankie also intended to stay but were sent away by the scientist so he could handle it himself. Admiral Kizaru wanted to end this here. The old friend felt that Kizaru was truly pitiful, recalling the time they spent together playing happily. This admiral admitted that he was indeed pitiful for not being able to cry, thinking it would have been better if he had worn dark sunglasses today. Outside, the warships had received orders to punish those who challenged the world government. This island was considered a threat, so everything would be burned down just like Ohara. Saint Saturn declared that those who study the world's secrets, those who carry the bloodline of a vanished race, those who awaken the ancient god, this island is where all that he declared converges, so it must be destroyed. The Buster Call order has been activated, and all naval warships off the coast are ready to fire. Dr. Vegapunk asked Saint Saturn to revoke that order, because this place is the future of humanity. Sanji's group was trying to get Kuma to hide, and Bonney was very sad to see her father unable to move. Her eyes began to tear up, feeling sorry for her father. Returning to Vegapunk's negotiation, even though he said Egghead was the future of humanity, the other party still disagreed. A subordinate came to invite the two leaders back to the ship because it was very dangerous here. But the old man said that he and Kizaru would stay here until the very end. After preparing for the bombardment, they should immediately open fire. The vice admirals hesitated upon hearing this but were dismissed by Admiral Kizaru. Dr. Vegapunk thought that if only he died, everything would end. So why destroy this island? Egghead stores many of the latest research achievements from all fields. If it is destroyed, humanity's scientific progress will regress by 100 years. His old friend turned to Kizaru for help. But Kizaru looked sad and just turned away. Unable to help, Saturn asked if Dr. Vegapunk was hiding anything else from the world government. Or if he was secretly creating something troublesome. If so, he didn't need progress that carried rebellious ideas. The genius scientist bowed his head and begged one more time. Unexpectedly, the other person revealed that he had sent a fleet to destroy the ship that left the island yesterday, carrying all the scientists working there. The reason given was that there was someone on that ship who knew something about the Void Century. Hearing this, Dr. Vegapunk asked heartbrokenly why he did that. They knew nothing, they were all innocent people. Saturn blamed him for dragging them into this. Just like the people of Ohara, they were drawn into the desire to explore things from the past that no one was allowed to know. He angrily said that Vegapunk was foolish, so he should disappear forever with this island. Off the coast, all the soldiers were retreating from the island, everything was ready, so they could open fire immediately. As for Sanji, he was urging his teammates to quickly go to the rendezvous point. While Vegapunk was stalling for time, they had to seize this opportunity. Bonney asked what about him, and Sanji smiled and replied, "Don't worry, I'll go there and bring the doctor along." Frankie also relied entirely on him and wished him good luck. The young man quickly contacted Nami's group to ask about the situation there. Everyone seemed to have reached the back gate. Nami was shocked to learn that the Marines had activated the Buster call order. Their crew had faced it countless times, so Usopp and Chopper were very scared. Robin was seriously injured but quite worried about the others. She wanted to do something to help but couldn't. Chopper saw this and advised his friend not to do anything but to rest. Nami asked about the captain and learned that he hadn't been seen yet. However, Sanji guessed that Luffy would be fine. The important thing was to find a way to escape here immediately. Currently, Zoro was still holding off Luchi and couldn't return, so Jinbei also had to go there to help, because if he left him alone, he would definitely get lost. Brook was currently helping Lilith move the Sunny. Their original plan had fallen apart because Vegaforce 01 had been destroyed by Kizaru. Fortunately, their musician had another idea. With his ability, he froze the surface of the clouds so that the ship could glide smoothly. The girl praised the skeleton for being so good. With this method, they would reach the back entrance soon. Praised as a genius, Brook was very happy. When Lilith asked how to stop the ship, he said he hadn't thought of that yet. As a result, the girl slapped him for being so stupid. If they continued like this, they would fall straight down. Brook cried out for help. Not knowing what to do, the scene shifts to the Marines. After seeing the protective barrier still in place above, he ordered them to fire into the urban area first. The target was to destroy the central factory and the future city. Hundreds of cannonballs were fired simultaneously. The rain of bombs worsened the situation. Yet at this moment, someone was still eating comfortably. Luffy's stomach was so full he couldn't eat anymore. There were still a few Marine soldiers blocking his escape. However, the subsequent bomb rain blew them all away. Luffy, being made of rubber, was also bounced elsewhere. The unfortunate ones who hadn't returned to their ships in time shared the same fate as the island. With buildings continuously collapsing, pacifistas continuously fired with terrifying power, piercing through everything. The future Vegapunk had built collapsed right before his eyes. He watched heartbroken as his empire gradually disappeared, his emotions completely gone. The doctor collapsed, as the future of humanity ended here, along with his own distant dreams. Saturn looked at Kizaru, ordering the admiral to finish off his close friend. He accepted the order, gritting his teeth and moving forward. Sanji arrived just in time, urging Dr. Vegapunk to run. On the other side, Atlas was activating the travel device. After launching at the speed of sound, Frankie was extremely excited. The travel time was only a little over 30 seconds. Unfortunately, the pipeline passed by Kizaru. With his devil fruit ability, even at the speed of sound, he could still catch up. As a result, the group inside the rocket was cut in half. They flew out, putting everyone in danger. Sanji angrily cursed Kizaru, then tried to fly up to save his comrades. Saint Saturn saw Kuma and immediately ordered the pacifistas to target the father and daughter. Bonney reached out for her father's body. They became the new targets of the cyborgs. Unable to do anything, the daughter's cry of "Father" made Kuma regain consciousness for a moment. He used all his remaining strength to hug Bonney and shield her with his back. The little girl was moved to tears, thinking that at least if they died, the father and daughter would be together. The scoundrel looked at this scene with glee. He thought of the daughter Kuma risked his life to save. now having to die at the hands of his own clones. This was truly deserved for a bunch of insects. Dr. Vegapunk was also heartbroken seeing the people he loved in danger. Earlier, after hearing that his granddaughter had become a pirate, the worst-case scenario had appeared in his mind: the pacifistas, shaped like Kuma, would personally shoot her down. This was truly heartbreaking beyond words. A barrage of destructive beams fired towards them. Sanji tried to approach and help. The scene shifts to the warship fleet ordered to eliminate the scientists leaving the now burning island. It's unclear what happened. The surviving marine soldier tried to report to Admiral Kizaru that they had failed to destroy the exploration ship, and someone was heading towards Egghead. At this moment, Luffy was being threatened by dozens of marine soldiers with guns. They demanded that the Sea Emperor surrender immediately. However, the main character just glared, calling them all weaklings and telling them not to order him around. Just like that, his large, round body immediately shrank back to its normal shape. Digesting a large amount of food in a short time was too illogical, astonishing the marine soldiers. They believed that Luffy was indeed not human, because who could make their belly swell to its maximum and then shrink down so quickly? Since bombs and bullets were still raining down on the island, the soldiers ignored Luffy and returned to their ships, as it was too dangerous there. A loud laugh came from within the smoke, which provoked the remaining marine soldiers. Just as they were about to use sea stone handcuffs to neutralize his devil fruit power, the ground suddenly turned into rubber. The warrior of liberation had returned. Once again, Luffy, in his Sun God Nika form, was incredibly joyful, laughing and joking, scaring everyone away. On the coast, the Marines were still using warships to shell the island. The damage was immense, but Dr. Vegapunk didn't care about that now. What he feared was that Bonney and the others would die. Knowing he needed to do this to save everyone, the doctor called Atlas to relay a message to his granddaughter. While Saturn and Kizaru weren't paying attention, Vegapunk had completed his mission. He urged Atlas to quickly tell Bonney about this. Below, Sanji was also trying to get close to rescue them. Below were a series of cyborgs ready to open fire. Atlas tried to approach the father and daughter to deliver the message from the doctor. It was a gift Vegapunk had for his beloved granddaughter. Understanding everything, Bonney looked at her father, then turned around and shouted loudly for the pacifistas below to hear. She told them not to shoot Dad, and to help them escape this island. Upon hearing that command, all the cyborgs immediately stopped and turned to aim at the marine warships. This was a huge shock that left the other side no time to react. Just like that, many warships were shot down in an instant. Perhaps this was the final mission of the pacifistas when they were created by Dr. Vegapunk. The damage to the Marines was immense. The only thing he worried about ultimately did not come true. The years Bonney and her father lived in the laboratory. From that moment, the doctor had foreseen that the future would become like this. What could be more terrifying than being killed by one's own beloved father? To prevent Kuma from harming his own daughter, Vegapunk programmed a special command into all Kuma-like units that only he knew. Even if they received orders from the government, or even if the world turned its back on the father and daughter, the Kuma-shaped pacifistas would forever stay with Bonney and protect her. This was his own selfish wish, and the consequence of this action was being stabbed through the chest by Saturn. The doctor had foreseen the consequences but still accepted it. Witnessing that scene, everyone was worried, but the danger had not disappeared. Kizaru had been ordered to eliminate everyone above. With the speed of light, he flew towards the father and daughter to attack. Just like that, everyone was hit. Sanji tried to counterattack but it was useless. Kizaru approached Bonney and told her not to worry. He would finish it quickly so she wouldn't feel any pain. At the most critical moment, the laugh of the warrior of liberation rang out. In the very next second, a giant, reinforced fist punched the Marine Admiral far away. The girl knew it was Straw Hat Luffy, but she had no idea where he was. After eating his fill, he had enough strength. Just like that, the entire island was transformed into highly elastic rubber. The building swayed to the joyful laughter coming from the main character. Saint Saturn poked the ground with his staff, realizing that everything here now had the properties of rubber. The warrior also approached, thinking this game was starting to get fun thanks to Luffy's special ability. The group of friends were unharmed after falling from the sky. But they still faced a formidable enemy they couldn't defeat. Their only hope at this point was probably Luffy himself. Outside in the sea, the pacifistas were still firing at warships. And the Marines were trying their best to stop the biological robots. Admiral Kizaru, after being knocked away by the main character, was dazed and unable to get up. Bonney saw Dr. Vega Punk lying on the ground and immediately ran to check on him. He was still alive, so his granddaughter urged him to quickly get up and run. Their enemy advised them not to resist in vain. However, at this moment, Luffy arrived, making the buildings shake. The old man called him a troublesome brat. The drums of liberation that Luffy created once again awakened the giant robot on the island. This rhythm also helped Bonney start to realize something. Back when the father and daughter were still at the church, they often talked about Nika, the legendary warrior. Kuma really wanted to become a hero to save the oppressed and suffering. His daughter also asked if he would come to save her, and he said of course. So, the father and daughter danced to the rhythm of liberation that Kuma knew. Legend says that Nika will come with laughter and move to this rhythm. The drums of liberation grew louder and louder. Bonney intently looked at Luffy's current appearance. Everything matched her father's description of the hero of liberation. Dr. Vega Punk then confirmed that everything his granddaughter was thinking was true. At first, he didn't believe it, but after witnessing it with his own eyes, he understood. Luffy, the one Kuma entrusted his faith in, was the embodiment of the Sun God Nika. So, the person she had been searching for all this time was here. Bonney was moved to tears and looked towards her father. Kuma was completely right, as everything he said about Nika was true. A hero who would powerfully change this world. Currently, the order to destroy this island was no longer effective. Because out there, many people had been waiting for Nika for centuries. At the same time, a giant ship was approaching from the sea. They realized that the battle had begun. And as the newspapers had reported, both of them were here. The Marines then continued to receive bad news. That a giant ship was approaching from behind. Seeing that symbol, a vice admiral had to send an alarm to all warships that the giants were coming. This was completely unexpected because everyone thought the two people on that ship had disbanded 100 years ago. The only thing that could make them present here was Luffy. So the Marines fired cannons at the giant ship. However, their firepower was too weak to cause any damage. To answer the question of why Dorry and Brogy were here, the two giant warriors jumped down. Submerging the marine ship, they laughed and unleashed powerful slashes, threatening the small people below. Of course, both of them were here at Luffy's call. Or rather, the Sun Gods. The giant pirate crew officially landed on the island.
With their colossal bodies, Dorry and Brogy sent the Marines fleeing in terror. The large axe struck directly down onto the warship below their feet, shattering everything into many pieces. The giants began to shout, calling for the remaining members to come to the island to help Luffy. With just one jump, the two giants reached the mainland, followed by familiar figures who crushed everything in their path with a large ship. Oimo and Kashi were assigned by the captain to defeat all the troublesome marine ships. Dorry reminded everyone to be careful and spread out to eliminate anyone who dared to touch the Straw Hat pirates. Hearing this, everyone laughed loudly to boost their morale. Just like that, they coordinated to destroy all nearby warships. The Marines could only scream in despair, unable to do anything, announcing that the legendary giant pirate crew had arrived. The leaders were Brogy and Dorry. At this moment, the Marines still didn't know why they were here at this crucial moment. Warships from afar tried to fire cannons, but failed. With the giants' bravery, they continuously destroyed warships without any difficulty. At this time, Usopp, from above, discovered that his old friends had come to help, and was moved to tears. He asked why the great lords had come. Nami was delighted that Oimo and Kashi were also there, and the group began to recall what had happened years ago. For a very long time, the world had always feared the giant pirate crew, but they disbanded due to a fierce quarrel between the two captains, Dorry and Brogy. Luffy and the other members unfortunately fell into that 100-year-long battle, even though they had forgotten the reason why the two sides fought. But Brogy and Dorry continued. Luffy and Usopp were extremely amazed by the immense pride displayed by the two giant warriors. This motivated Usopp, who said, "This is exactly what I want to become, a brave warrior of the sea." And on another island, the Straw Hat Pirates met Oimo and Kashi, who wanted to know news about their captain. After that, everyone became friends. And now, when everyone was in danger, these friends came to help. Perhaps the giant pirate crew had heard some news, which is why they rushed here. This incident is an attack related to the government. The next day, it will surely be published in the newspaper. Although the news will be written in a way that benefits the government, it will still be enough to create a major shocking event. Usopp was also sure that the great lords would not come to fight, but to save them. So they also had to speed up the plan. Nami contacted Brook to ask how he was, and only heard the other girls scream. Brook reassured her not to worry. He would be there soon with the Sunny. Although he still didn't know how to stop, he was very confident in his luck, advising Lilith that rushing wouldn't help. She was afraid that if they continued like this, they would crash into the barrier and explode. She contacted Nami again for help because she would pass by them. Elsewhere, Zoro and Luchi were still fighting without a clear winner. The situation was becoming more chaotic than ever, so Jinbei reminded the crew's swordsmen to end the fight quickly. After fighting for a while, Zoro was also out of breath from exhaustion, saying Luchi was truly stubborn. While he himself was in a hurry, the opponent said that only the final winner had the right to say that. The two sides continued to clash. Luchi reminded Zoro that he was making his teammates wait to distract him. Martial arts versus swordsmanship, but because the other person possessed an animal-type devil fruit, his stamina was far superior. Thus, Zoro was pushed back. The opponent knew the personalities of the Straw Hat crew members, which was that they wouldn't abandon anyone, so he simply needed to stall for time to win. Because that way, the other members would be stuck here. Hearing this, our swordsman replied that he was not the one to decide how long this battle would last. So don't be overconfident. Returning to the coast now not only means facing a giant pirate crew, but the Navy is still suffering heavy losses from the biological robots. About 30 small warships have been sunk, and the number is still increasing. There's no other way. The Vice Admiral of the Navy ordered the large ships to target the pacifistas to reduce the damage. Although it's still unknown why the biological robots rebelled, the top priority is still to preserve the Navy's forces. Nearby, despite the extremely intense battle, two other powerful figures were leisurely strolling. It had been a long time since they had participated in such a large battle, so they were quite excited. The sniper friend thought this was definitely a battle that could change the fate of the world. Returning to Bonney, who was now looking at the image of the Sun God Nika. Every movement, every sound that Luffy made impressed her. She had always been looking for the warrior of liberation, and now that person had appeared, seeing her friend crying. Luffy asked if something was sad. Bonney called Luffy an idiot. Of course she had to cry because she had always been looking for him. Luffy laughed and said that he had always been there with her all this time. She said that before she didn't know Luffy was the Sun God Nika. In fact, Luffy didn't even know what Nika was, and asked why she wanted to find him. Bonney replied that she always wanted to be able to throw a powerful rubber punch like him. Hearing that, Luffy remembered that this friend had also used a similar move earlier. He criticized that punch as being very weak. Hearing that, Bonney asked Luffy to demonstrate, to throw a powerful punch toward Saturn to avenge Vega Punk. He looked at the scientist and realized there was a large hole in his chest. Shocked, Luffy's eyes popped out. Their enemy had not yet acted, but declared that the insects would not be able to do anything to him. Luffy didn't think so. And when Bonney asked him to take her and everyone off this island, Luffy agreed. By the way, he wanted to show Bonney what a powerful punch was like. Conqueror's haki began to emanate, making Saturn worried. He continued to use his gaze to make Luffy unconscious, but this time he endured it. He laughed and charged, then used two giant fists to continuously punch Saturn in the face. He couldn't resist, and could only endure the damage Luffy inflicted. Bonney witnessed this scene with great satisfaction. The words Kuma once said about Nika appeared in her mind. The actions of the warrior of liberation moved her soul. Nika was considered a legend, but that father had told his daughter that the warrior of liberation would make everyone laugh to the rhythm of liberation. And if the hero could change this world powerfully, Kuma believed it was Luffy. High above, our captain was still throwing a series of powerful punches at his opponent. As a result, Saturn couldn't bear it, and was sent flying through the buildings. Luffy laughed gleefully after those punches. Thanks to him, their group had time to escape. Atlas urged everyone to hurry up and go. Frankie also called Bonney, but she was worried about Dr. Vega Punk. He said he was also a medical expert, so he knew his current condition well. So, don't worry, and run first. Suddenly Kizaru's voice rang out, saying that whether he moved or not, He would die anyway. Before everyone could react, this admiral shot a beam of light directly at them. Fortunately, Sanji stepped forward to block it, surprising the opponent. Frankie's jaw dropped, and he exclaimed that it was a laser beam, and yet he could still kick it away. His friend said that it didn't matter to him. His love would definitely be stronger than light. Hearing this, Kizaru found it funny, and wondered if there was something wrong with Sanji's head. Frankie was assigned the task of protecting Bonney and not letting her get hurt. Vega Punk continued to urge his granddaughter to leave the island with Kuma. They could now hover close to the ground, allowing them to move quite quickly. Luffy then praised his crewmate, saying Sanji was amazing. The Marine Admiral said he would lose face if he couldn't bring back their heads. Sanji lit a cigarette and chuckled, saying that in that case he just needed to write an apology letter to Marine headquarters. Meanwhile, St. Saturn unexpectedly encountered 2 members of the Blackbeard pirates. Devon had eaten the mythical 9-tailed fox devil fruit. Seizing the opportunity, she approached and touched Saturn's body with one hand, saying the mission was complete. Van Augur, on the other hand, had eaten the warp fruit. When asked about being one of the dangerous prisoners on level 6, yet serving someone else, Devon said Captain Teach was special. The old man also knew that Blackbeard's bloodline was very special, coupled with the strange actions of this pirate crew. Saturn wanted to know what they truly wanted. Van Augur said it was the world, but he was attacked by the old man. However, using his warping ability, he safely transported his comrade to another location. Since the mission was complete, both intended to return immediately. Van Augur himself had not yet mastered his warping ability and still needed more practice. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared, crying with joy at having found the two. Caribou couldn't believe he met them here and asked to join the crew, saying he set sail with the same hope as that person, and his dream was to become one of Blackbeard's subordinates. So he begged the two to take him with them. Caribou cried, saying he had a secret that Mr. Teach would surely want to know. He believed that if he were introduced to the captain, both their statuses would be elevated. However, Van Augur didn't believe him, and directly threatened him with a gun. Caribou, terrified, begged, saying he wasn't an enemy, so they shouldn't shoot him. He cried out that fate had brought them together in this place, asking if they thought so too. As for him, he was very sure, so he begged them to listen. Devon felt that the man in front of them was truly incomprehensible, while Van Augur knew clearly that the opponent was Caribou. Although they were both pirates, this island belonged to the world government, and the appearance of a stranger was not worth trusting. Caribou begged them not to kill him because he was not a subordinate of the Marines at all, and if they killed him here, Captain Teach would crush their heads. This threat made the other two feel confused, asking for a clear explanation of why. The suspect then revealed that he had important information that others didn't know. Devon felt it was absurd just hearing it. What important information could a mere incompetent pirate have? Caribou continued to assert that if they killed him, they would regret it for the rest of their lives, because he possessed information powerful enough to shake the entire world. He hoped they would understand and take him to meet Captain Teach, as it would be mutually beneficial. He secretly thought about what he had accidentally learned. These were ancient weapons named after gods that had existed since ancient times, one of which was Poseidon, held by the mermaid princess Shirahoshi, and another was Pluton, deep underground in Wano. These terrifying ancient weapons were said to be powers capable of destroying the entire world. The Straw Hat Pirates, and he were the only ones in the world who knew the exact locations of both of these destructive weapons. Looking at Caribou's confident expression, the sniper asked him to reveal the secret now, but he refused. Only when I meet Captain Teach will I provide all the information I have. He will surely be delighted. Back on the beach, the Marines still didn't know how to deal with the biological robots. Although some pacifistas had been taken down, there were still many left. The Marine warships were shot down one after another, and each time they fired back, the bubble shields of the biological robots activated, blocking all damage. Having no other choice, the vice admirals had to order a retreat before the casualties increased. However, the attack range of the pacifistas was very far, and even though they kept their distance, some ships were still shot and exploded. The desperate cries of the Marine soldiers worried Vice Admiral Doberman. He knew that if they couldn't control the pacifistas, they couldn't destroy this island. Fighting them also made others feel bored, And, furthermore, the giant tribe had landed on the other side of the island. These were all unexpected events. Since Dr. Vega Punk was the one who gave the pirates control of the pacifistas, the Marines had even more reason to destroy this place. The crime of betraying the world government was a very serious crime that needed to be dealt with strictly. First, they wanted to regain control of the biological robots, and that could be done by eliminating Bonney. Many vice admirals were ordered to go ashore and search for her. At this very moment, Frankie and Bonney were being pursued by Vice Admiral Tosa. Although they were flying at high speed, the old man could still catch up. Atlas asked Frankie to use all his strength to shake him off, but due to the excessive speed, it was very difficult to control. He tried to weave through the trees, while Tosa used his muscular strength to cut them all down. Witnessing this scene, the two were extremely worried. Bonney warned that he was about to do something. The Vice Admiral tensed his arms to unleash a special move towards Bonney. However, before he could get close, the giant tribe arrived and intercepted him. With just one blow, the Vice Admiral was flattened. The Frankie group looked up and were terrified by the giants. As a latecomer, he had no idea who Dorry and Brogy were. The young girl screamed in fear, as it was her first time seeing someone so huge. Frankie thought they were enemies, but that wasn't the case. Their friend asked who they were, and although they had studied the new Straw Hat members through their bounties, they didn't recognize anyone. Dorry said, "We're here to find Luffy and the others." Frankie happily replied, "He's our captain." When asked if they wanted to fight Luffy, they said no. The giant pirate crew was there to help their old friends. This was the promise they had made with the Straw Hats long ago. With such strong allies, Frankie felt completely at ease. Bonney said that Vega Punk, Sanji, and Luffy were in the center of the island. Hearing those names made Brogy feel nostalgic. Of course, they would save Vega Punk, as he was the person the scholar had mentioned. So, the giants took Kuma onto the ship for treatment. The others would head to the center of the island to help Luffy. Outside, the vice admirals were losing patience as Tosa's communication was cut off. The remaining ones were forced to seek out the giant's ship for an opportunity. Many years ago, Dal had a giant as a boss, and he was very strong, so the members of the giant pirate crew could not be underestimated. The Frankie group was being taken to safety. He said that the remaining crew members were in the laboratory in the clouds. Back to St. Saturn, who was now panting, his entire body suddenly transformed, becoming stronger and larger. Luffy went to Vega Punk and asked if he was okay. The doctor's heart was being measured by advanced equipment in the laboratory, and it was weakening by the second. Conversely, their enemy was becoming more terrifying. Wherever Saturn went, poison spread, to the point where the ground melted. Luffy realized that if he took Dr. Vega Punk away now, he would bleed to death. Admiral Kizaru felt things had gone too far, and being constantly obstructed by Sanji annoyed him. Conversely, Sanji asked the opponent not to block their way anymore. At this moment, Saturn's ugly form attracted them. He was extremely angry that he still couldn't eliminate Luffy, who was still sitting there talking with Vega Punk. He said that they had promised to take him away from here. However, he knew he wouldn't live much longer, so he asked Luffy to leave. He also wanted to tell Bonney about her power when she got a little older, saying that her life would definitely be in danger. So, he hoped Luffy could protect Bonney. Sanji stood before the enemy and felt that he was completely different from a human, from his insane eyes to his monstrous appearance. Saturn looked towards Luffy to find an opportunity to attack. Sanji also warned him and immediately carried Vega Punk to another place. He knew the doctor would be in a lot of pain, but had to endure a little longer. The main character, seeing his comrades in danger, actively attracted attention. By clapping his hands loudly to create sound, he laughed and said, "I'm here to provoke the monster." Saturn, provoked, turned to target Luffy. However, he easily dodged the attack and simultaneously asked Sanji to take Dr. Vega Punk first and not to worry if he was in pain while moving. Following that advice from the captain, Sanji turned and ran, but Saturn chased him. The main character appeared in front of him again to provoke him. He said, "You will never be able to catch us." He even slapped his butt like a child. Extremely angry, Saturn attacked wildly, but not a single blow hit Luffy. He dodged very well, treating this battle as a simple game. As for Dr. Vega Punk, He now asked to be put down. Sanji continued to run, but Kizaru appeared and blocked his way. He was kicked away, unable to do anything. Vegapunk was pierced through the body by his old friend using devil fruit powers. After the act, the Marine Admiral felt very sad, but could not disobey orders from his superiors. Sanji was also shocked to see Dr. Vegapunk like this. Luffy continued to ask his friend to take him to the back of the island with the other members. This time, Kizaru did not stop them, but just stood there, holding his sadness within. Luffy angrily transformed his body to become huge, and even Admiral Kizaru and Saint Saturn were held tightly by him, unable to move. Luffy said he would not let them chase his friends. Vegapunk, at this point, could no longer breathe. Looking at Luffy one last time, he smiled contentedly, and then his heart stopped beating. Sanji, heartbroken, tried to shake Vegapunk awake, but it was in vain. Perhaps the doctor had foreseen this scenario, so as soon as his heart stopped beating, a pre-prepared recording immediately played for the whole world to see. Dr. Vegapunk introduced himself as a genius scientist, and the message he left behind would surely shock everyone. But it was the truth of the world, so he would still speak it. Dr. Vegapunk's plan was set in motion the moment his heart stopped beating. In the recording, Shaka told him to speak slowly, so that people all over the world would have time to prepare. After this news was broadcast, it would surely spread everywhere, but they still had to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. All over the world, people had now begun to hear the voice of the genius scientist. Vegapunk's plan was to use marine branches around the world as relay stations. The words they spoke would be forcibly broadcast at maximum power, which is why, even if the Marines tried to turn off the equipment, the voice still echoed. On the island, Sanji also heard those words through his headphones. He asked Vegapunk what was going on but received no answer. The two opponents being held by Luffy were extremely angry, while he smiled confidently, having subdued Kizaru and Saturn. Hearing Vegapunk's voice, Luffy thought he was still alive and was very happy. Conversely, Saturn was extremely worried about what the scientist would say to the world. High above, the remaining members of the Straw Hat Pirates were confused about what had happened. Nami and Usopp thought Dr. Vegapunk was acting recklessly. If so, it would ruin their rescue plan. No one had realized that their friend had died, so the recording was automatically played. Back with the giant pirates, Brogy and Dorry were trying to run as fast as they could to Luffy. They knew something was about to happen and felt very excited. Below, the Marines were still ambushing, trying to stop them. However, with Brogy and Dorry's massive size, the Marines were like mere insects. Everyone trembled before these two. Looking at the fools below, the two giant warriors praised their courage. Unfortunately, that wouldn't change anything. A barrage of cannon fire was then shot by the Marines. The explosion was huge, but Dorry and Brogy were completely unharmed. At this point, the soldiers below realized that this was not an opponent they could defeat. Just like that, the axe and sword of the two giant warriors struck down. After just one blow, all the Marines below were defeated. The two captains then continued to search for Luffy. Currently, Dr. Vegapunk's broadcast has not encountered any problems. He decided to take 10 minutes to let people all over the world prepare, so they could clearly hear what he was about to say. Luffy looked excited after hearing this. He thought that now he just needed to deal with the two opponents in front of him, and the whole crew could leave safely. The scene shifts to Mary Jiwaz. At this moment, the broadcast that Vegapunk had prepared was making the 5 elders of the government worried. They communicated with Saturn, asking what was happening. He replied that Kizaru had just killed Vegapunk. Guessing that the message left by the genius scientist would turn the world upside down, these 4 wanted to find the broadcast source and destroy it before things got out of control. They guessed the broadcasting device was protected inside the shield at Egghead. There were 9 minutes left before the truth about the world began to be revealed. However, all over the world, people had already started gathering to listen. Dr. Vegapunk's fame made everyone curious about what he wanted to convey. In the kingdom that Luffy had once rescued from Doflamingo's evil rule, Princess Rebecca was as beautiful as ever. She and her father were watching the broadcast when Leo and Cub arrived. Before that, they heard that Luffy had taken this scientist hostage, but Rebecca didn't believe that information. She knew that Lucy, who had saved her and this kingdom, was not a coward who would take someone hostage. Hearing this, Leo also agreed. Her father realized that Vega Punk was broadcasting voluntarily, not under orders from the government. The truth about the world that the genius doctor spoke of still has to wait for him to tell it himself. The scene shifts to Luffy's hometown, where everyone is also waiting for the latest news. They even thought Luffy had done something bad again. In the places where the Straw Hat pirates passed through, everyone was preparing to wake up to listen to the broadcast. In the sky, Princess Vivi was on reporter Morgan's hot air balloon. He explained that this broadcast was being relayed through naval branches, but it was an independent signal, so it couldn't be interfered with. Based on the time in the image, Morgan realized that this was not the current time on Egghead, but had been recorded beforehand. This would become world-shattering news, and reporters all wanted to write about it. Vivi was worried about Luffy and his crew, hoping they wouldn't be in any danger. In Usopp and Chopper's hometown, everyone was watching the screen. At the same time, on Okama Island, the Revolutionary Army, especially Ivankov, was very curious about Dr. Vegapunk's head. It looked like it had been cut off, but he was still alive. Other members like Sabo were also curious about the truth of the world in Vegapunk's words. He asked Dragon if the genius doctor would really reveal the truth of the world. He said that some geniuses can even see their own future. Vegapunk had predicted that he would die, so he left this recording. Back to Bonney and Kuma, they were safely brought back to the ship by their giant friend. The father was still unconscious, with no signs of recovery. Atlas only showed Frankie the giant ship, something they had never seen before. As soon as the two captains returned, they would set sail immediately. Now, the task was to gather all the other members of the Straw Hat crew here. Inside, Luffy was still provoking his opponent. He said that Saturn's punches just now had no effect at all. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Admiral Kizaru attacked, but Maine dodged. He said that, until the very last moment, all his friends would escape from here. So, he wouldn't let them go anywhere. He used his ability to stretch his arm, then slammed Saturn and Kizaru's bodies together with a powerful blow. As a result, the two were flattened by Luffy as thin as a sheet of paper. Not stopping there, he even used his fingers to perform. The bodies of the two enemies were now as soft as a pizza. Luffy then used great force to throw Kizaru and Saturn away. After the fight, he returned to his original size and laughed loudly at his victory. On the coast, the group of Marines discovered something flying towards them. In the next second, Admiral Kizaru's body collided with the ship, causing it to explode. Saint Saturn was luckier, not colliding with anything. He was angry that Luffy had thrown him again. With his ability, Saturn immediately returned to attack. Luffy was also shocked to see this. Under Saturn's new attack, he had to find a way to escape. He didn't understand why his opponent wasn't injured, despite being hit so many times. As for Admiral Kizaru, he was fine, but what pained him was that he had personally killed Vegapunk. Sadly, Kizaru could only cover his face to hide his emotions. In the sky, Luffy's chase was still ongoing. The rulers reminded Saturn that there wasn't much time left. They didn't want Vegapunk's words to affect the world government. Luffy was attacked continuously, but dodged them all. He fell to the ground, but was unharmed. His opponent also landed safely, looking at the captain with terrifying eyes. Saturn knew he couldn't deal with Luffy alone, so he used his ability to summon 4 others from the Holy Land to help. Just like that, the strongest began to act. The sky there turned black again. Lightning bolts struck down, just like when Saturn appeared. Luffy witnessed this scene, not knowing what was happening. Sanji, nearby, looked worried about the captain. The Straw Hat Pirates' worst nightmare has begun. Out at sea, the Navy saw large lightning bolts striking the center of the island. Some soldiers witnessed it firsthand and believed the phenomenon was identical to how St. Saturn had landed on the island earlier. Nearby, a giant archer was still firing numerous arrows at the Navy's warships, each arrow the size of a mast, making them incredibly powerful. Another giant warrior took the opportunity to jump onto the remaining ships to destroy them all. Inland, the group of giants was excitedly heading towards the center of the island, with dangerous lightning flashes before them, signaling that Luffy needed help. Even Frankie's group had to stop, worried about their friends. Luffy, at this moment, looked surprised, not understanding what had happened, as 4 extremely dangerous dark shadows appeared around him. Sanji exclaimed that something unusual was happening in this place, and therefore they had to leave as soon as possible. At this point, Dr. Vega Punk's recording was still ongoing, broadcast live from Mary Joy's, and it was known that no one could stop this live broadcast. However, the current appearance of the 4 leaders of the world government has put Egghead at risk of destruction. Saturn was continuously attacking Luffy, but he kept dodging. The dark shadows behind him began to reveal their true forms. Seeing this, Luffy was deeply shocked, thinking they were 5 giant monsters. Frightening sounds emanated from within the thick smoke. Luffy stood there, waiting to see what would happen next. In his mind, he felt as if he was being swallowed by the darkness of the 5 monsters. One by one, the different forms of the 4 newly summoned beings appeared. These are the forms of the rulers at the head of the world government. The 5 monsters including Jew Peter in the form of a sandworm, Marcus Mars in the form of a bird, Warcury in the form of a pig, Nusjuro in the form of a horse, and finally Saturn in the form of a spider. When these 5 monsters appeared together, destruction had begun. Their roars pushed Luffy back. The buildings also could not withstand it, and collapsed. With his abilities, Luffy easily escaped the rubble. However, standing before him was the massive body of the enemy. At the start of the battle, just the 5 monsters walking past Luffy forced him to dodge. These are the supreme judges of the world government. If this continues, the entire island will be destroyed. Luffy demanded that they stop. He then enhanced his body, transforming into a giant form to fight. However, Saturn used a special skill, an attack with his gaze, to defeat Luffy. Just like that, his large body shrunk back to its original form. Nusjuro then, with incredible speed, jumped over Luffy, and Luffy was also thrown far away by the pressure. With his speed, he reached the battle on the coast, where the pacifistas were still attacking the Navy warships. The damage was immense, which is why Nusjuro had to rush to help. He transformed into a centaur and used a sword to attack. The high-speed slash instantly froze the pacifista's body. This ability is somewhat similar to Brook of the Straw Hat Pirates. Just like that, a series of cyborgs were neutralized by Nusjuro, unable to function. His movement speed was so fast that Navy soldiers couldn't even see what was happening. In this way, the world government faction was able to retain all the pacifistas so that the damage would not increase. The battle on the coast was considered over as the cyborgs had part of their bodies frozen. The soldiers at this time also saw the giant horse form, but Nusjuro disappeared immediately afterward. Inside, Luffy was blown away once again by Marcus Mars. At the same time, Sanji had contacted Nami and Robin. He didn't know how to explain what was happening below, warning of a great danger approaching them. He asked them to escape immediately, and the giant bird also separated to do the same work as Nusjuro. The Marines were happy to regain the upper hand, as they could now avoid unnecessary battles with the cyborgs. The Vice Admiral ordered everyone to quickly find Bonney and destroy the Straw Hat Pirates. Above, after flying to the shield, the giant bird let out a cry signaling that something bad was about to happen, and Sanji was also trying to run back to regroup with his teammates. He said that an extremely dangerous monster was flying towards them, so they should retreat immediately. Even Sanji had become a target of lightning attacks. Nami was worried that the remaining members had not yet arrived, and Usopp then heard a loud sound coming from behind him. Along with that was Lilith's scream, and Chopper wondered what was happening. Just then, their sunny ship rushed out, shocking the 3 friends, while Brook was still happily enjoying the thrill of the ship speeding away. Lilith begged someone to stop this. Back to Luffy's battle in his Sun God Nika form, Saturn began to feel annoyed as his opponent easily dodged his attacks. Seeing this, Jupiter stepped in to help, trying to swallow Luffy, but he still escaped. Luffy realized that his opponent was an earthworm that could hide underground, and because he couldn't predict where Jupiter would appear, he was thrown into the sky. Just like that, Luffy fell into the mouth of the giant monster. The scene then shifted to the beach, where only a few cyborgs were still active. However, they were soon defeated by Nusjuro, and the giant bird turned its body into fire and plunged straight into the protective shield to find Vega Punk's broadcast device and destroy it. Inside, Usopp still didn't realize this and contacted Sanji, saying that Brook and Lilith were temporarily there with them and the sunny ship. Brook confidently said, "See, I told you it would be fine," and Lilith scolded him for saying that when Usopp was the one who stopped the ship. Before that, when the sunny ship rushed over, he used a type of bullet that grew trees to stop the ship, and they were also planning to leave according to the original plan. However, Zoro was still fighting, and Jinbei was going to call his teammate back. Sanji was angry when he heard this, and he asked Jinbei about the situation there, and he said he understood the situation. "Even if their battle is not over, I will force Zoro back." Hearing this, Sanji was somewhat relieved. At the same time, the two powerful warriors were still competing. Luchi continuously used speed to attack, but Zoro still blocked it. His opponent ran around, creating a smokescreen to obscure his vision, and then launched a powerful kick that cut down all the surrounding trees. Zoro also responded with 3 continuous slashes, and as the two sides rushed at each other, they suddenly felt someone extremely powerful attacking this place. In contrast to Zoro's uneasy feeling, Luchi was extremely excited, realizing that it was one of the 5 leaders of the world government. In the next slash, Zoro let go of his sword, and both sides seemed tired, as they couldn't decide a winner. Luchi thought that Zoro was distracted because he felt the terrifying haki, which was covering the entire island. Jinbei had arrived at this point and saw the battle between the two, and Luchi continued to attack with long-range moves. Zoro had to dodge, so he was approached by his opponent, and the battle was still very balanced, with neither side at a disadvantage. Jinbei informed Sanji about this, which annoyed him, as he thought Zoro was putting the entire crew in danger, calling Zoro useless without realizing that he had heard it. Zoro, fueled by his anger, wanted to unleash a finishing blow in the next move. Luchi completely failed to notice the change in his opponent and continued to charge in to attack, but even after throwing hundreds of punches, Zoro still dodged them all. He built up momentum and slashed with all 3 swords, and in that moment, Luchi realized he was the loser. Zoro successfully cut through his opponent, causing him to collapse, and Jinbei was incredibly surprised to witness this. At the same time, Luffy had fallen into the monster's belly. He tried to escape, but was bitten by the earthworm's teeth. Fortunately, he was still able to escape. Luffy said he didn't taste good, so don't eat him like that. As soon as he finished speaking, Saturn controlled Luffy and slammed him straight towards Warcury, and just like that, Luffy's head collided with the head of the giant pig. Once again, he was swallowed by Jupiter. Fortunately, Brogy and Dorry were present at this time. Hearing Luffy's cries for help from inside the earthworm's belly, the 2 giant warriors rushed in to attack. Saturn and Warcury also stood up to compete, but Dorry and Brogy easily fended them off. In terms of strength, they were not inferior. The 2 giant warriors then threw the 2 monsters directly at each other. They continued to rush towards Jupiter and unleashed their ultimate move, cutting the earthworm into 3 parts. Thanks to this, Luffy was freed, which made him very happy. After seeing the 2 old giant men, Luffy also greeted them, as it had been a long time since they had met. Dorry said we couldn't stand by and watch the Straw Hat Pirates in danger, so we came here. Dorry and Brogy were relieved to see Luffy still healthy. It had been 2 years since they last met, so both were overjoyed. At the same time, Marcus Mars successfully infiltrated after crashing straight through the shield. He wanted to stop Vega Punk's live video broadcast. Below, Jinbei couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the giant creature. The bird's haki was so terrifying that even he was afraid. Therefore, he had to quickly bring Zoro back and leave this dangerous island with the other crewmates. Jinbei asked Zoro to follow him, but he refused. Lucy, despite having 3 slashes, had not yet fallen. Just by looking at his eyes, Zoro knew he could still fight. The opponent then turned to look at the two of them, just as Sanji contacted to ask if he had taken Zoro away yet. Jinbei immediately held his crewmate tightly, telling him that he had won and didn't need to fight anymore, while the opponent slowly approached. Seeing this, Jinbei used Fishman Karate to attack Luchi, a move used to create a diversion and give the other two a chance to escape. After transforming back into his human form, Luchi was surprised that Marcus Mars was here. He asked his subordinate where York was. Zoro, being led away by Jinbei, also wondered what the giant body of the monster was. And as for Luchi, facing the question from his superior, he showed fear. He then stated that York was still being held in the control room on the 4th floor, Building A. The two who just escaped were Roronoa Zoro and Jinbei, the Son of the Sea, and there were 5 other members of the Straw Hat Pirates here as well. They and 2 other Vega Punks were preparing to leave through the back exit of the lava phase, and in the basement of the laboratory, there were still 85 Cypher Paul agents and 4 Seraphim. Vegapunk's broadcast would continue in another 6 minutes. Hearing this, Marcus Mars seemed very satisfied with this useful information. He praised Luchi for doing a good job and said he had no more questions. Before letting him leave, Luchi had a request. It was about his severely injured crewmate in the control room. Please, spare him. Marcus Mars said that was very difficult. Insects are sometimes crushed, even if one has no intention of doing so. This extinguished Luchi's hope of saving his crewmate, because, after all, they were just insects in the eyes of the Gorosei. Back with Luffy, he felt that the 2 old giants were as strong as ever. They said they almost didn't recognize him, and that the Straw Hat crew must be the ones who changed the most in 2 years. Brogy asked why Luffy knew about the legendary Elbaf god's form. They were truly happy to see this form. Luffy said he didn't understand what he was talking about, but to talk about it later because they needed to deal with the 2 monsters first. After being attacked by the 2 giants, Saturn and Warcury had fully recovered. They considered the 3 to be an unpleasant combination. In Dorry's eyes, the 2 monsters in front of them were as large as the wild beasts in the Elbaf forest. Luffy reminded his 2 friends, saying that his crew didn't want to fight anymore, so they should find a way to escape. Dorry agreed, because, in fact, they had just met Sanji, who had relayed the entire plan and asked them to come here to take Luffy away. Brogy said that after reading the news about their group in the newspaper, they came here to help. The newspaper wrote that Luffy was a villain, had taken Vegapunk hostage, and was surrounded by the Marines. Hearing this, even Luffy chuckled. He didn't expect the newspaper to write such a thing. Currently, the members of the Straw Hat Pirates were separated, so they had to quickly regroup and leave this place. To inform everyone, Dorry blew a large horn, making the sound echo across the island. On the coastline, after hearing the horn, the other members of the giant pirate crew recognized it. Their captain had met Luffy, so there was no need to fight anymore. Before leaving, they also mocked the Marine soldiers below, saying that even if they attacked the Marine battleship, there would be no treasure to steal. Inside, Warcury was unhappy to realize that it was a signal to retreat, and he also wanted to issue a warning so that no one could escape. The giant pig snorted and roared, the deafening sound accompanied by haki power, forcing the 2 giants to use their shields to block. The entire island was shaking violently, and the weaker Marine soldiers were knocked unconscious by the haki. Even the giants were affected by this roar. Luffy, not hiding behind the giants' shields, bore the full brunt of the pressure Warcury created. His body began to stretch comically, to the point where his 2 eyes and the scar on his chest flew off his body. Witnessing this scene, Dorry and Brogy were so shocked they couldn't believe their eyes. Everything on Luffy had been blown away by the wind, leaving only his pants. He cried out, but showed no pain, asking his two friends to pick up his two eyes to put them back. Dorry immediately used his sword to catch the things Luffy dropped. He then retrieved everything and put them back on his body as if nothing had happened. Brogy asked if Luffy was okay. He just smiled and thanked them. Luffy said he was fine, then stretched his face like rubber to prove what he had just said. Dorry laughed loudly, thinking his body was very funny now, while Brogy admitted that Luffy was much stronger than before. And now they had to face the one who created the roar of Conqueror's Haki before they could leave. Warkery looked at the three of them and called them insects. Luffy told his two friends that the one in front of them was an arrogant member of the world government. The opponent said that to ensure Luffy would not return to his original form, he would chop him into pieces. With that, he charged to attack, and Dorry and Brogy immediately had to use their shields to block. The pig's fangs had turned into sharp blades. If the two giants hadn't stood to block the attack, Luffy's body would have been cut into many pieces. When asked if they knew who the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates was, the two giants replied in unison that Luffy was their friend. Immediately after, they used their strength to knock the beast away. Saturn then stepped in to take over the attack position, saying he didn't care about the relationship between insects like them. He wanted to erase Luffy from world history forever. Saturn spat out highly poisonous balls towards Luffy, who reminded the two giants not to touch them. He himself pulled up a nearby coconut tree to create a baseball bat to block. Using his imagination, Luffy used his teeth to shape the bat. Then he painted another layer of paint to make the bat shiny, and he also put on the hat with the number 56. As soon as the poisonous balls flew over, Luffy used the giant bat to perfectly hit them all away, even saying, "I'm returning these poisonous balls to you." Warcury and Saturn were hit, causing a huge explosion. Luffy was very surprised, not expecting it to explode so loudly. But this was their chance to escape. The other crew members warned that the flames were spreading closer, so they had to leave immediately. Brogy and Dorry thought the two monsters had exploded into smithereens, but Luffy explained that they were immortal beings and couldn't die. Even though he had tried everything, they still recovered, and they had never heard of such an ability or race. It was best to run away now before something worse happened. At the same time, Usopp's group was struggling to pull the Sunny out of the pile of trees, but despite using all their strength, they couldn't move it even a little. Nami looked at this scene with a bit of worry. "I don't know when I'll be able to leave here. Robin still needs rest, while Jinbei has brought Zoro back. Since the flying device ran out of energy, he switched to running on his own feet to be faster. On Bonney's side, she is still running towards the giant tribe's ship. Kuma shows no signs of waking up due to severe injuries, and Atlas then warns about those standing in front of the ship, blocking their way. These are the three Marine Vice Admirals tasked with eliminating Bonney. Sanji, on the other side, is also racing against time. He has a bad feeling about what's about to happen. Vega Punk's broadcast is still ongoing, and seeing this, York, who is tied up below, doesn't understand what they are trying to do. She demands to be uncuffed, but she can't, and at this moment, York's cry helps the giant bird discover her. Marcus Mars asks where the room on the screen that Vegapunk is showing is, and York, completely unaware of who this is, shows fear. The scene shifts to Admiral Kizaru, who is still lying on the ship. When asked where his injury is, he says this: "I have a very deep wound in my heart, but no one needs to do anything. Just let me rest." Inside the island at this moment, the giant robot has fully awakened. Although his body is very old, he still stands up and calls out, "Joyboy." The spear that was stabbed into him is pulled out, and right below, some Marine soldiers are still chasing the members of the giant pirate crew. However, they have to stop because they can't believe their eyes. There is something much larger than the giants. This scene is seen by the entire Marine faction from a distance. The burning flame cannot stop the giant machine's advance. As he moves, he apologizes to Joyboy. The situation on the island was utterly chaotic. Frankie's group was blocked from escaping by the vice admirals, while Sanji was trying to get Vegapunk's body to safety. On the other side, Nusjuro continued to take down the last active cyborgs. His speed was so great that the pacifistas, even after detecting their targets, couldn't react in time to attack. Seizing the opportunity, the Marines mobilized their entire force to bombard Egghead Island once more. This time, their goal was to wipe out the entire area, leaving the Straw Hat Pirates no escape. Nusjuro never expected that Bonney, a mere 12-year-old girl, would be entrusted by Vega Punk with enough power to destroy an entire nation. He considered the doctor a foolish traitor. Meanwhile, the remaining giants had begun to return to their ship. The order from the Gorosei was to sink the Elbaph ship to prevent anyone from escaping. Cornered, Bonney was forced to fight to protect Kuma. The first to engage the Vice Admiral was Frankie. His opponent possessed a steam-powered arm, but Frankie's steel arm was stronger, and he quickly defeated his foe. Immediately after, another Vice Admiral targeted Bonney. The girl asked the accompanying giant to take care of her father, then plunged straight into battle. When her opponent called Kuma a weapon, Bonnie's anger erupted. Using her devil fruit power, she transformed him into a child. The Vice Admiral tried to beg for forgiveness, but Bonney, who was also just a little girl, didn't hesitate to teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. As she attacked, she shouted, "My father is a hero! Take back what you just said." Atlas also quickly rushed in to assist, delivering a punch that sent the third Vice Admiral flying. She asked where Luffy and the others were. If they hadn't arrived yet, the group would have to temporarily retreat. However, Frankie suggested defeating all three Vice Admirals before their comrades arrived. Despite being defeated, the Vice Admirals were still seasoned warriors with astonishing resilience. The scene shifted to Marcus Mars. With his colossal body, he terrified York to the point of tears, constantly begging for her life and crying out, "I don't taste good. Please don't eat me." Marcus Mars angrily roared, but the girl continued to cry. Finally, he broke her shackles, freeing York to calm her down. Then, Marcus Mars asked York to take him to the room appearing on the screen, where Vegapunk was broadcasting the video. Since York was also one of Vegapunk's clones, she must know the location. Having no other choice, Marcus Mars used his massive beak to grab York's body and flew off. Meanwhile, the video Vegapunk had prepared was still playing. However, he had not yet revealed the most important thing, perhaps waiting for the right moment. Shaka asked, "Aren't you having coffee?" Vegapunk replied calmly, "I'm very sensitive to hot things." Only 4 minutes remained before he would reveal the truth about the world. At the same time, Marcus Mars had brought York to a room that looked exactly like the one in the video. She confirmed, "This is it. They filmed here." Hearing this, the giant bird opened its mouth, blowing out a powerful stream of fire, incinerating everything around. He believed that if he destroyed everything, Vegapunk's broadcast would be cut off. York frantically rushed to stop him, shouting that destroying this place was useless, because the video was still playing, proving the transmission device was not here. She began to deduce if she put herself in Vegapunk's shoes, he would surely hide the original device somewhere safer. But if Marcus Mars continued to wreak havoc, the consequences would be extremely serious. She warned that the second floor of the building was the weapon deployment area, the first floor was the energy plant, and the third floor was filled with high-pressure gas cylinders. If those exploded simultaneously, all of Punk Records will be blown away. Hearing this, Marcus Mars asked York to think of a solution. She nodded, saying that she would end this stupid broadcast immediately. Just then, Marcus Mars suddenly sensed a sound coming from a small creature. Most likely, the snail messenger. This proved that the room containing Vegapunk's original recording was very close. He immediately asked York to take him there. Meanwhile, inside another building, Stussy could finally breathe a sigh of relief as the giant monster had spared them. She realized that the giant bird was one of the 5 elders, Gorosei. Her teammate beside her also trembled, gasping for breath and joking awkwardly. "Were you abandoned?" Hearing this, Stussy just gave a faint smile. "No need to pity me. I voluntarily stayed to finish the last task. Elsewhere, Nami's group received news that they had to leave Stussy behind. Edison explained that there was no other choice, as someone needed to lower the shield just as the ship escaped. The Frontier Dome system could only be deactivated from the control room, and Stussy had voluntarily taken on that task. Everyone could only accept it. The best way to thank her, Edison said, is for all of us to get out of here together. Edison reassured her, I've calculated everything. This ship will fall straight to the ground, but we still have a chance to land safely. Upon hearing this, Nami and Chopper burst into tears, while the other members announced that the propulsion system was ready. They just needed to wait for Zoro and Jinbei to return. Then they could all jump into the sea. However, Chopper was still worried that this wouldn't be enough to reach the sea surface. Edison laughed, thinking their ship was troublesome. But he also added, It's that determined spirit that creates miracles. I'm just a scientist, but I believe in you all. He guaranteed that the ship would land safely on the water. After saying this, Lilith suddenly realized something and quickly tried to stop him, but Edison was determined. He immediately flew towards the shield, despite the desperate screams of his friend behind him. According to his calculations, upon impact with the shield, his body would suffer 78% damage. That's not enough to kill me, Edison said. As soon as he touched the shield, a huge explosion rang out. Those who witnessed it could only stand frozen in shock and pain. Outside the coast, a strange phenomenon was occurring. All the Navy warships were suddenly pulled strongly towards Egghead Island. The reason was Jupiter. He continuously sucked everything around him into his body. The terrifying suction force made Dorry and Brogy unable to move, and even Luffy, in his Sun God Nika state, was held tight, unable to budge. In this critical situation, Luffy quickly thought of a way. He grabbed Brogy's arm, using the momentum to fly straight up. Nearby, he discovered a building just large enough to stuff into the giant sandworm's mouth. Luffy cut the building in half, lifted it with his muscular form, and shouted, "If you're hungry, eat these buildings!" After saying that, he threw the giant concrete block straight into the opponent's throat. The attack, with terrifying power, made the monster collapse on the spot. Thanks to this, the three of them had a chance to continue fleeing. However, using too much strength caused Luffy's body to return to its old man state. Brogy asked in surprise what had happened. Luffy gasped, saying that he had almost run out of energy from food. Hearing about food, the two giants remembered that they had brought some fermented shark, the emergency food of the giant race. Its smell was so strong that Luffy grimaced, but to regain his strength, he still decided to eat it. Dorry laughed and said, "Once you get used to it, you'll find it delicious." Indeed, after just a few bites, Luffy's body fully recovered, becoming as strong as before. Seeing this, Dorry laughed and said, "Your body is so simple. Just eat, and you're strong again." But their joy was short-lived. Warcurry, with the body of a giant pig, caught up with them. Brogy warned Luffy to stay away, but he chose to stay and fight. "Once I'm full, I'm not afraid of anything," Luffy shouted, then leaped high, activating Gear 3rd, creating a giant fist to attack Warcurry. The terrible collision stunned Warcurry, but Luffy also screamed in pain. The pig's body was as hard as steel. The two giants, seeing this, urged, "Retreat! Don't let these monsters catch up." At the same time, in the research area, Lilith was silently expressing her sorrow for Edison. However, they had no time to grieve, because, at that moment, Saturn suddenly appeared, putting everyone in danger. Below, Bonney's group had finally defeated the three vice-admirals. The accompanying giant invited them onto the ship, but the very next second, he was slashed by Nusjuro's sword. His sudden appearance left everyone frozen in fear. The scene shifts to Vega Punk's secret room. Thanks to York, Marcus Mars finally found his way there. As expected, the original Den Den Mushi was there. Marcus Mars let out a cold laugh, saying that Vega Punk's luck had run out, then raised his arm, preparing to destroy the device immediately. Speaking to the whole world for the first time made Vega Punk a little flustered. However, The waiting time was over, so he calmly began his speech. Meanwhile, Marcus Mars discovered something astonishing. The world's greatest brain was being stored right here. Even though Vegapunk's original body had died, the brain continued to exist. It contained all of humanity's knowledge, and its current size was as large as a building. While Marcus Mars was distracted, the transponder snail tried to crawl away to escape, but it was too slow and was still caught by him. In the video playing, Dr. Vegapunk said that many people might not believe what he was about to reveal, but this broadcast would surely make the whole world listen and unite. The scene shifted to the East Blue, Usopp's hometown. There, children were intently listening to stories about Dr. Vegapunk, the person who had created countless great inventions that changed the world. Although they couldn't see his image, they could hear his voice transmitted through the radio waves, and everyone was curious to know what the secret of the world was. Vegapunk also made significant contributions in the field of medicine, so he had a profound global influence. At this moment, the Marines were trying their best to stop the broadcast, but the signal continued to spread everywhere. In a distant sea, the whale Laboon surfaced. On its massive body were intricate scars and the familiar skull symbol of the Straw Hat Pirates. In the future land, Vegapunk's hometown, everyone was intently watching the screen, eagerly waiting to hear what their genius scientist would say. For the people there, Vegapunk was a great source of pride. A child wondered, didn't he cause the nightmare in Baltimore? The old man next to him shook his head, gently explaining that it wasn't Vegapunk, but Frankie, who had transformed his own body into machinery. In the South Blue, where Chopper once honed his skills, the island residents also received news about Vegapunk. They discussed him, the father of modern science, who contributed to the creation of countless advanced weapons. Meanwhile, on Hachinosu Pirate Island, the situation became chaotic. Everyone's attention was drawn to the broadcast. Everyone was eager to know, what exactly is the secret of the world? Back in the laboratory, Marcus Mars crushed the transponder snail to cut off the broadcast. But what he didn't expect was that Vegapunk had anticipated this. That snail was just a fake. The broadcast continued as planned. Marcus Mars was furious at being tricked, immediately transformed into a giant bird, and flew off, determined to find the real live broadcasting device. Around him, the scene was only ruined buildings, with no trace to identify the broadcast location. The next scene shifted to where Luffy and the two giants were trying to escape. Behind them, Warcurry was still relentlessly pursuing. No matter how many times it was defeated, the monster recovered, as if it had never been injured. Warcurry contacted Marcus Mars, asking if he had found the broadcasting device yet. The giant bird replied that Vegapunk had hidden it too well. The Gorosei began to worry. If things continued, all the world government's secrets would be exposed. Marcus Mars swore he would find it, but needed more time. Saturn urged him to quickly destroy the device, but Marcus Mars said that Vegapunk had prepared very carefully, so it couldn't be easily disconnected. They didn't know exactly what Vegapunk intended to say, but York had revealed that he had taken over Ohara's research. Hearing this, Warcurry and Saturn thought he was seeking revenge for the Ohara tragedy of the past. Meanwhile, Sanji was still trying to get Vegapunk's body to safety. Suddenly, he sensed Bonney was in danger and immediately changed direction to help. Nusjuro declared that he would not let Bonney get the Marines' weapons, but Frankie resolutely stood up to protect her. Just then, Sanji appeared and plunged into the battle. Nusjuro's sword slowly rose. In a dangerous moment, Sanji kicked to block the blow, then counterattacked with a powerful kick to the chin, making his opponent spit blood. He declared, "No one is allowed to hurt her." Flames raged fiercely around Nusjuro's body, but he did not stop. Nusjuro transformed into a giant horse, biting Sanji tightly. Vegapunk's body fell, fortunately caught by Atlas in time. Bonney worried about Sanji, but could do nothing. The two below continuously dodged the terrifying stomps from the giant horse. Fortunately, Oimo and Kashi appeared just in time. After realizing that the other group were allies of the Straw Hat Pirates, they immediately rushed to assist, holding Nusjuro's body tightly so Sanji could escape. However, the opponent's strength was too great, causing even the two giants to struggle. Seeing this, Bonney transformed into a giant form, joining them in battle. Nusjuro transformed back into human form, continuously slashing with his sword. But Bonney, with the advantage of her giant size, did not flinch. During the broadcast, Vega Punk admitted that he had committed 2 major crimes, so he might be arrested or executed. That's why he recorded this video and set it to play automatically when his heart stopped beating, which meant he was dead. The news stunned the whole world. Everywhere, those watching were shocked. 2 former colleagues who had tried to overthrow Vegapunk also couldn't understand why he chose this path. Vegapunk said that no matter who executed him, he would not consider them evil. In Nami's area, the Straw Hat crew was facing Saturn. His giant and terrifying body made everyone panic. Saturn asked them to get out of the way, because he didn't want to waste time. Lilith and Brook rushed over, calling on everyone to stop the monster. Chopper tried to take Robin to safety, but she refused, determined to stay. In Robin's mind, the voice of the one who had ordered the destruction of Ohara still echoed. The opponent quickly recognized her as Nico Robin, the last survivor of Ohara, and the one Akainu had failed to kill. Nami was surprised, not understanding why the opponent knew Robin's past so well. Lilith explained that he was one of the 5 elders. The giant monster immediately attacked Robin, forcing the others to take the blow. Nami ran to carry Robin away, while the remaining crew members unanimously declared, "No matter what happens, we will definitely protect her." Meanwhile, Luffy was still fleeing from pursuit. Warcury asked Marcus Mars about the broadcast location, but he still hadn't found it. Jew Peter was also searching all over the ground without finding anything. No one expected Vegapunk to cause so much trouble. Off the coast, Navy warships continued their fierce bombardment. The entire island was on fire, but nothing could stop the broadcast. Vegapunk said that his statement might make many people laugh, but nevertheless, everyone had the right to know the truth. In another room, York was trying to find the broadcasting device. She was confident that, since she was also a Vegapunk, she would soon find it. However, too many fake transponder snails had been set up beforehand, making it impossible for Marcus Mars to distinguish the real ones. When someone suggested destroying the power plant, Saturn immediately objected because it would cause immeasurable consequences. Finally, Vegapunk delivered a conclusion that shook the entire world. All continents on Earth would be submerged to the bottom of the sea. That statement silenced everyone. The Gorosei were collectively enraged, while people all over the world could only watch in stunned silence. At Marine headquarters, everything became chaotic after hearing Vegapunk's announcement. They couldn't believe that the entire world would be submerged under the ocean. The scene then shifted to a pirate town, where all of them disbelieved Vegapunk's words, thinking he was using his own death to cause chaos in the world. How could the whole world sink into the sea? However, many people still put their faith in Vegapunk, just like the residents of Water 7. There, the water level rises significantly every year, and soon the city will be submerged. What they couldn't believe was that not only this place, but the entire world would be submerged by seawater. The information had begun to spread everywhere, even in Impel Down, where Doflamingo burst into laughter upon hearing the news from Vegapunk. He asked Warden Magellan what he would do if the prison was flooded, as their responsibility was to keep the prisoners safe. Magellan admitted that the place had fallen into chaos when the sea level rose by a few meters, but to submerge the entire world in water was truly unbelievable. Doflamingo suggested that if the water rose by just 5 meters, most cities would suffer heavy damage, and he asked if they should move to higher ground, hinting at Mary Joy's. In the Ryugu Kingdom, they had also heard the information from Vegapunk. Princess Shirahoshi was extremely worried, asking her father if Vegapunk's words were true. The king was unsure, but said they would have to prepare for the upcoming disaster. Back on Egghead Island, Marine soldiers were furious at Vegapunk's baseless declaration. They believed the greatest scientist was lying, and that this would throw the world into chaos. Above, Marcus Mars was still flying around, searching for the source of the video broadcast. He asked the others to destroy all the transponder snails before Vegapunk revealed all the important secrets. The situation with Bonney and Nami was very tense. They had to face the powerful Gorosei. As for Luffy, he was still being chased by Warkuri. He transformed into Gear 5 to attack the enemy. Those who wanted to stop the information Vegapunk was broadcasting were trying to find the location of the original transponder snail. York had searched everywhere, but couldn't guess where Vegapunk had hidden it. The genius scientist continued to talk about the information he had found. According to his calculations, just a few days after recording this video, the world would experience an unusual earthquake, shaking the entire world. Upon hearing this, many people began to believe that the scientist's words were true, as an earthquake had indeed occurred just today. As a result, the sea level would rise by about 1 meter worldwide, and some islands would be submerged and become uninhabitable. Beaches worldwide would also disappear. Now, everything Vegapunk predicted had come true. This made the pirates who initially mocked him feel scared. Next, Vegapunk wanted everyone to listen carefully to what he was about to say. The earthquake that shook the entire world was not a natural phenomenon. At this moment, Saturn was extremely angry that Vegapunk was about to reveal important information. He continuously attacked the members of the Straw Hat Pirates. Nami then counterattacked with lightning, and the rest of the group also rushed in to drive the monster away. However, all wounds healed instantly, and Saturn attacked continuously without stopping. He used his giant spider legs to slam down, and the pressure from the blow blew away Nami's entire group. Seeing this, Robin tried to use her devil fruit power to create a net of arms to catch her teammates. At this moment, Vegapunk was talking about his desire for peace. After defeating Nami's group, Saturn did not kill them, but quickly ran in another direction. This confused Nami, who thought they were his target. Saturn then asked Marcus Mars if he had checked the power plant, to which he replied that he hadn't because the room was heavily guarded. Hearing this, Saturn decided to go there to find and destroy the device broadcasting Vegapunk's video. At this time, the scientist was talking about his first sin, which was creating an infinite energy source. He was driven by a desire to bring great progress to the world. Saturn then found the room containing the eternal flame that Vegapunk created, also known as the God of Fire. He transformed back into his human form and destroyed the nearby transponder snail. However, Vegapunk's voice did not stop. This was still just a fake transponder snail. Saturn ordered the others to destroy all living creatures in the laboratory, and Marcus Mars was doing the same, but it seemed ineffective. Outside, the marine warships were trying to fire cannons at the giant robot, but it did not stop and continued to move. Inside the island, Luffy felt dizzy after spinning continuously. Dorry asked him to stop playing and focus on running, while Brogy worried about the fire spreading across the island, saying that if they didn't escape soon, they would all burn to death. The genius scientist then spoke about the period from about 900 to 800 years ago, a blank period in history. At this point, those living in Marie-Jouise were extremely angry. They wondered what the Marines were doing to let this video spread, but some were also interested in the information about the century erased from history. The only way to know what happened during that period was through the stone tablets called poneglyphs, which were scattered all over the world, but very few people understood the ancient language. Not to mention, deciphering poneglyphs was strictly forbidden by the government. Although he was a scientist working for the government, Vegapunk tried to decipher it, and this was his second sin. Robin and everyone else were still safe. Lilith thought that Saturn left because he was agitated by Vegapunk's speech. The doctor had deciphered many poneglyphs with excellent scientists, thus learning about the erased part of history. After crashing into the shield, Edison was still alive, trying to help the Straw Hat pirates escape safely. Outside, after seeing Warcury almost catch up with the two giants, Luffy decided to attack the monster one more time. Vega Punk was talking about a man born 900 years ago in a highly developed kingdom. It was said that he had a rubbery body like the Sun God Nika in the story of the giant tribe in Elbaf. That man's name was Joyboy. And now, the one with that power was Luffy, who delivered a powerful punch to the giant monster's face. However, his arm was also burned by the flame. Seeing this, Brogy and Dorry laughed loudly, thinking that Luffy never learned his lesson, as he had been burned before when hitting the other monster's body. According to Vega Punk, Joyboy was considered the first pirate on the high seas. The scene shifted to the peaceful land of Wano, where little Otama and others were listening to news from Vega Punk. Thanks to Orochi's transponder snail, they would know what was happening out there. They knew nothing about Joyboy, but Otama wanted to see Luffy again. Vega Punk continued to talk about the information he read on the poneglyphs. It was about a great battle between Joyboy and the world government of today. More precisely, it was the predecessor of the world government, consisting of 20 kingdoms forming an alliance. This means that Joyboy's pirate faction was so strong that nations had to cooperate to fight against that man. Vega Punk could not find out the cause of the battle. All he knew was that Joyboy was born in an extremely advanced civilization 900 years ago. The weapons used in the previous battle far exceeded the capabilities of current science, and were considered ancient weapons. At this time, Nami was trying to call Zoro and Jinbei back. They noticed that the clouds around them were moving. This was what Edison was talking about when he promised to help them land safely in the water. If the clouds continued to expand until they were parallel to the water, they could slide down and leave this island. Inside the control room, Edison was praying for the members of the Straw Hat Pirates to escape safely and not to be caught by the world government. At the control room, Stussy was still trying to find a way to assist the Straw Hat Pirates. Edison then contacted her, asking her to quickly turn off the energy shield and run. She refused, believing that if she did, the Straw Hat members would be attacked by the Marines. Edison said that their shield was actually useless now. The leaders of the world government had infiltrated, and the Gorosei were the ones they needed to fear, not the Marines. Marcus Mars was currently using his special ability to disable all communication devices on the island. Edison said he had done his best to ensure the Straw Hat Pirates could escape, and the rest was up to them. Hearing this, Stussy breathed a sigh of relief. She was afraid that if Luffy and his crew couldn't escape, Vega Punk would be angry with her. Edison wanted her to leave quickly to save her life, but Stussy said she couldn't. Now that Stella was gone, she didn't know who to live for. At the same time, Jinbei and Zoro received a new message from Nami, and the fishman apologized for the delay. Nami then threatened to kick Zoro because he didn't realize his mistake in wasting everyone's time. Out at sea, the marine warships had begun to approach the giant pirate crew's ship. Nami didn't want to be attacked as soon as they landed in the water, so she asked Jinbei to go faster. Vega Punk had now been taken to another location by Atlas, and despite her sadness, she still had to return to help Bonney escape the island. The battle between the giants and Nusjuro was still very intense. He could cut through anything. While the two giants attracted the enemy's attention, Sanji rushed in to attack. However, his kick was blocked by Nusjuro's sword. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't kick away the enemy's weapon. Instead, he was sent flying by him. Oimo and Kashi then grabbed the giant horse's tail, which annoyed Nusjuro. Bonney also rushed in to attack with Oimo, but even though he was attacked from two directions, the opponent still blocked. The Gorosei's power was still far superior to theirs, and Kashi was also kicked away by the horse. At that moment, Bonney was in danger. Nusjuro jumped high, intending to slash her. Fortunately, Bonnie's body had shrunk back to her child form, allowing her to dodge the slash. Frankie also jumped up to catch her, advising her not to overexert herself. Oimo and Kashi continued to fight. However, Nusjuro ignored them and ran off to another place. It seemed that the Gorosei's current priority was to stop Vega Punk's video to conceal the world's secret. Nusjuro was angry that the genius scientist kept talking about Joyboy's failure. Although that event had ended, it left immeasurable, irreparable remnants of war. Hearing this, Nusjuro used his ability to cut the island above where the Straw Hat pirates were preparing to leave in half. His special weapon was incredibly sharp. That slash caused half of the Sky Island to fall, thereby freeing the world government agents. At this point, Vega Punk continued to talk about the world's secret. The lands they lived on were actually all islands. Hearing this, many people found it uninteresting because Vega Punk's words were too obvious. His next sentence astonished many. Because the world of 1,000 years ago was not at all like the present, the disaster at that time caused the entire land to sink into the sea. Now they were only living on the remaining fragments of the ancient continents. The Revolutionary Army was extremely shocked to hear this news, that the world had once sunk into the sea. Now the world of 1,000 years ago had been destroyed and lay deep beneath the ocean. It was believed that there were once many continents, but now no traces were recorded in books. This was indeed shocking news, but not for Nojiko, Nami's sister. She chose to go take care of the Tangerine Garden, asking everyone to tell her about it later. Vega Punk continued to emphasize that within 100 years, the sea level had risen by 200 meters. Upon hearing this, many Marines showed fear at the declaration. Even the giant warships were only 60 meters long. The superior then came out, ordering the soldiers to work and not to believe Vega Punk's words. In Chopper's home kingdom of Sakura, after hearing that the continent had sunk and history was being hidden, many people questioned whether it was true. But if these words came from Vega Punk, then it must be true. This world still holds many interesting things that they have yet to discover. The reason for the 200-meter sea level rise was also revealed by the scientist. Everyone might think it was caused by a natural disaster, but he concluded that the reason for the rising sea level was caused by humans. This was unacceptable to the journalist Morgan, who protested Vega Punk's words, but was stopped by Vivi to listen further. Vega Punk's assertion that the sea level rise was caused by humans was well-founded. He had used every means to investigate, from meteorology, geology, environmental science, to atmospheric science. Vega Punk affirmed that the cause did not come from nature, and finally, the answer was revealed. The scientist discovered the key factor and the existence of something called an ancient weapon. Something that had submerged the world 800 years ago still existed somewhere and was waiting to be activated once again. In other words, the Great War that erupted in the erased history had not yet ended, and only those with the highest power in the world knew this clearly. Somewhere, a mysterious person was looking at a painting of a girl with a face similar to Vivi's, and at the same time, in Vivi's kingdom, the people were mourning the death of their king. Vega Punk continued to talk about his desire to create an eternal energy source for the future, and although not yet complete, the Mother Flame was the final achievement of his research. It was an energy source that would surely make human life everywhere in the world better. But a terrible thing happened when a small piece of that eternal flame was stolen. This was his fault. The situation on the island had now become uncontrollable. Stussy asked Edison what had happened. He said he didn't know anymore. The laboratory, along with the Cypher Paul agents, had all fallen to the ground. He tiredly sat down to rest, stating that the Straw Hat pirates were still safe. But another madman in the Gorosei was heading towards them. Edison continued to beg Stussy to run, and she asked if she could release Kaku. She promised not to let him touch the Straw Hat pirates. Hearing this, Edison agreed, and also had to apologize to her for letting Stussy betray her friends. However, she still chose to help them. So, now do whatever you want, but promise to keep living. Hearing this, Stussy shed tears and promised to try to keep living. Vegapunk's story continued. 2 weeks after the Eternal Flame was stolen, the Lulusia kingdom was completely wiped out. Realizing that his research was what had powered the ancient weapon and destroyed a nation, he felt very guilty. Vegapunk didn't know who had activated the ancient weapon to do that, but what he was sure of was that he had indirectly caused the deaths of countless people in Lulusia. And the disaster that could submerge this world might happen again. In Wano at this time, after hearing about the ancient weapon, Momonosuke spoke of Pluton, one of the 3 ancient weapons that Vegapunk mentioned. Joyboy had tried to pass these weapons down to future generations, but why would that person want this world to sink into the sea again? There are still many things they don't know about the erased history, but there are still people who know about this event. These are the members of the Pirate King's crew, and this shocking news caused chaos at Marine headquarters. Back to Yor, she was wondering why Vegapunk knew she was the one who stole the Mother Flame. Realizing something, Yor finally guessed the location where Vegapunk hid the live broadcast device. She immediately reported this to the Gorosei. The broadcast device was actually hidden inside the Iron Giant. The Marines were trying to shoot down the giant robot but couldn't. Its body was too big and strong. Normal cannonballs couldn't penetrate it. The scene shifts to Rayleigh after hearing what Vegapunk was saying. He drank so much alcohol that he got drunk, which surprised Shaki. It was rare for him to drink so much. Perhaps Rayleigh was remembering the Pirate King Roger. After learning the exact location where Vegapunk hid the broadcasting device, the Gorosei immediately took action and headed towards the Iron Giant. They wanted to stop the scientist's broadcast immediately before too much important information was revealed. To do that, Jupiter wanted to crush the Iron Giant. The scene shifts to Hachinosu Pirate Island after hearing the shocking news from Vegapunk. The pirates on the island were extremely excited. Believing that there were countless treasures at the bottom of the sea, they shouted and competed to dive down to explore. However, some thought that finding treasure at the bottom of the sea was very difficult, because there were giant creatures at the bottom of the sea capable of swallowing an entire ship. Others thought it would be great if they could find a mermaid to guide them. Somewhere at sea, the captain of a pirate crew was extremely excited about the information about the advanced civilization that Vegapunk was talking about. Although it was hard to believe that the entire world would be submerged to the bottom of the sea, the captain was still very happy to invite other crew members to prepare for a dive. The scene shifts to Vice Admiral Smoker at this time. He was moving while contacting his subordinate. Asking where she was now, Tashigi said she was at the hospital with the SWORD unit, inside the hospital room. Kobe was extremely worried, not knowing what to do next. Currently, there was too much information for them to process, and his teammates advised him to rest and recover. If Kobe followed them now, he would only be a hindrance to everyone. Another member then came in and announced that their captain was recovering very well. Hearing that the others were also relieved, Kobe asked what would happen next if Vegapunk's words were true, and the other guy admitted that if it were true, the Marines would face a crisis. His female friend thought it was time for their sword unit to act. The leader of the sword unit, Drake, was still listening to Vegapunk speak. At this time, all over, people began to believe the claims made by this scientist, wanting to know what Pirate King Roger had left behind after learning about the erased history. At the same time, at Nami's group, the shield had been turned off by Stussy, creating an escape route for them. Nami immediately asked Brook to prepare the ship to leave, just waiting for Jinbei and Zoro to return, and they could safely land on the sea. However, Lilith saw that there were many marine ships gathered below, and if they landed now, they would likely have to engage in combat with many marine warships. Brook had also finished fueling the Sunny's propulsion system, and Nami contacted Jinbei asking where they were. He said they were almost back, but a monster was running towards everyone in front. They were chasing after that giant horse, warning those on the ship to be careful, because the monster looked very strong. Nusjuro then jumped straight to Nami to attack. And the girl didn't have time to react, so she just stood still. The others also showed fear of this giant creature, and Lilith realized that this was the Gorosei. Seeing this, Zoro asked Jinbei to throw him towards the enemy, and he used Fishman Karate to throw the swordsman straight. While flying, Zoro drew his two swords and slashed directly at Nusjuro, but the opponent easily sensed and parried the slash. The two swordsmen clashed, but with his ability, Zoro successfully knocked the giant monster away, thus ensuring the safety of the remaining crew members on the ship. Jinbei then successfully caught Zoro's body from above, and he asked Nami to make the ship run immediately, knowing that the enemy in front was too dangerous. They would find a way to jump onto the ship later, so she didn't need to worry. Back on the beach below, the giant ship was being attacked by the Marines. At this time, Bonney's group had successfully boarded the ship, just waiting for Luffy to arrive, and they could escape this place. She was worried that this giant ship would not be able to withstand the Navy's dense firepower. The vice admirals were now directing all their forces to surround and block the escape route, thinking that the giant's ship was only large in size and nothing special. They believed that if they continuously fired cannonballs, it would sink just like other ships. On the beach, Sanji was still waiting for his captain to arrive. He was worried and shouted Luffy's name loudly. Surprisingly, his friend heard him and replied, saying that he was almost there and they should start the ship immediately. Atlas also urged them to hurry before the ship was submerged, and from a distance, Dorry had already spotted the ship. Luffy looked very happy to be able to board the giant ship, and Brogy asked Oimo and Kashi to start the ship immediately. The people on board lowered the sails and turned around. Seeing this, the Navy vice admirals ordered a blockade to prevent anyone from escaping, but no matter how many cannonballs they fired, the giant pirate crew's ship remained unharmed. Instead, the crew members counterattacked by firing arrows at the Navy, and the weapons they used were all large. This caused heavy losses to the Navy, but they still tried to resist. With its enormous size, the giant pirate crew's ship crushed the ships below. The crew members also jumped down to attack, and the small Navy soldiers were not strong enough to harm the giants' bodies. Many warships were destroyed in this way, and seeing that the situation was not good, another vice admiral requested all warships to gather in one place to attack, and two other vice admirals were also present to assist. One person controlled a mechanical monster to fire at the giant ship, while the other rushed in to attack directly with punches. She hardened her arm and unleashed a series of powerful punches at Kashi, who was immediately knocked down and fell into the sea. Seeing this scene, the Navy soldiers were re-energized to fight. Back on the island, Luffy realized that the giant pig was no longer chasing them, and he wondered where it had gone. Dorry thought it didn't matter. What needed to be done now was to jump on the ship and escape. The reason War Curie was no longer chasing Luffy was to focus on attacking the Iron Giant with the other Gorosei. He was still moving around the island without realizing the danger. The four Gorosei in their monster forms had now surrounded the Iron Giant. Realizing that this was the entity that had attacked Mary Joyboy 200 years ago. Remembering this made Saturn extremely angry, and at the same time, Vega Punk transmitted information, hoping that everyone in the world would remember it. It concerned the letter D in the names of special people. Hearing this, the Gorosei immediately launched an attack on the Iron Giant. They did not want anyone to know the secret of those with the letter D in their names. Just as Vega Punk was speaking at a crucial point, the Iron Giant was knocked down by War Curie and fell into the sea. The impact caused the broadcasting device inside to malfunction, and the Iron Giant falling into the sea created a large wave that pushed back all the Navy warships. At this point, the broadcast stopped, leaving those watching regretful that they could not hear the end. Although they successfully stopped it, the Gorosei were extremely worried if the information just mentioned had been revealed. The Iron Giant sank to the bottom of the sea, and in his mind, he was wondering where Joyboy was, because he really wanted to meet that person again. At this moment, People all over the world were confused about what had happened when Vegapunk's video was suddenly cut off. Many questions were raised. Many people thought that the scientist might have been eliminated by the world government to hide a secret. But there were also those who suspected that the one who killed Vegapunk was Luffy. Returning to the Gorosei, they were in their giant monster forms, so most of the marine soldiers didn't recognize them. After learning that Vegapunk's video had been cut, the Gorosei were temporarily relieved. However, they still contacted York to ask how many other versions of Vegapunk were still alive. She also said that only Lilith and Atlas were left now. Upon receiving this important information, the Gorosei ordered them to be eliminated. This way, the government could later take over research and development through Vegapunk's remaining brain. The scene shifted to Stussy. After freeing his comrade, he asked her to leave. He warned that if Luchi came, he wouldn't be able to stop him. That's why she should leave as soon as possible. Stussy was about to say something, but was told to leave. She knew Kaku meant well for her, so she turned and ran. Out at sea, the giant pirate ship had started to move, and right behind it were the three captains. Luffy, Brogy, and Dorry jumped straight onto the ship to reunite with the other members. Sanji's group was very happy to see this, relieved that all three captains were unharmed. Luffy stood on the giant ship, extremely excited. Everything around him delighted him. He asked Sanji where the other members were, and his friend said that Nami's group was still stuck above. Luffy felt hungry and asked for something to eat. Below, the vice admirals were still in pursuit, but then Doll was forced to stop because Bonney used her ability to shrink her body. With such childlike bodies, they couldn't fight. Bonney stood high above, laughing and saying that if the Marines let her escape, they would be in big trouble. Doll angrily ordered them to open fire on the giant ship. Sanji then contacted Nami's group above, asking about the situation there, and learned that they were also preparing to leave. Thanks to Edison, they would probably be able to land in the sea. But if anything unexpected happened, they hoped the group below would help. Hearing this, Sanji promised to save all the girls, and as for the other members, he didn't care. The giants then announced that a large bird was flying towards them, which Sanji had anticipated. The Gorosei would not let their group leave safely. The scene shifted to Luffy. He had been taken to the giant's dining room. The chef knew he ate a lot, so he had prepared a feast for him. Even though he had eaten his fill, Luffy still felt it wasn't enough, and asked the chef to make him a few more dishes. Above, the situation was getting worse. Marcus Mars, in his giant bird form, spewed fire towards the ship. To reduce the damage, 3 giants had to use shields to block it, but the fire was too intense, causing the ship to burn. Sanji, who was protected, also thanked everyone. Bonney worriedly said she wanted to get her father and Vegapunk out of there as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the fire would burn them. Brogy and Dorry knew they couldn't ignore the giant monsters, especially the fire-breathing bird. Marcus Mars continued to want to spew fire towards them, but at this moment, the drums of liberation sounded. After eating his fill, Luffy seemed to have regained his strength. Immediately after, the entire area around the ship was turned into rubber. Frankie also asked his captain to stop the monster, and immediately after, the face of Sun God Nika appeared. Luffy joyfully jumped high, attracting everyone's attention, hearing the cheerful sound he made. Dorry and Brogy instinctively danced to the familiar rhythm of the giant's homeland. In their excitement, they forgot to put out the fire on the ship. Bonney and Sanji watched everyone dancing, not understanding what was happening. Kuma used to teach his daughter this familiar dance, and remembering that, Bonney knew the person in front of her was Sun God Nika. Luffy had transformed into a giant, which surprised the girl. He didn't know who the Nika Bonney was talking about was, but he knew very well that her wish was to defeat those who had harmed Kuma. Initially, Bonney was worried she wouldn't be able to do it. Luffy continued to encourage her, confident that she would succeed. He then changed his form for Bonney to remember. This was the appearance of a free person, and the warrior of liberation, as Kuma had described before. That person would appear with laughter and a vibrant rhythm that would make those around them want to dance. After feeling more confident, Bonney activated her devil fruit power, transforming her body into the form of Sun God Nika. Witnessing this scene, even Luffy was surprised. He was very happy that Bonney was just like him. The father below also saw this image. Kuma recalled his promise to Ginny that he would raise Bonney. The giants below also showed excitement at having two Nikas here. The Marines were fearful of the two white giants hovering in the air. On the shore, Warcury and Jupiter sensed something ominous and acted, with the monsters approaching to attack one after another. However, Luffy and Bonney were not afraid. On the contrary, they were extremely confident. Even the Iron Giant submerged at the bottom of the sea had been awakened. He sensed Joyboy was here. Marcus Mars speculated that Bonney's form was just an illusion created by the devil fruit. He accumulated energy and aimed it at the two Nikas. Seeing this, Sanji asked his captain to block the attack, and the other giants also cheered him on. Knowing that even if they crushed the Gorosei, they still wouldn't die, Luffy came up with a new way to drive them all away. He transformed his body into an elastic ball. The opponent's flames also caused Luffy pain. However, he asked the others to attack his body with all their might. Hearing this, Sanji and Frankie understood and immediately jumped up to follow the captain's wishes. Bonney hesitated, unsure whether to hit Luffy or not. Marcus Mars was then restrained by Luffy and couldn't move. He wanted everyone to attack him immediately. Since this was an order from the captain, Sanji didn't think twice and just followed. Receiving encouragement from Luffy, Bonney transformed her arm to become larger. Thus, the three of them attacked at the same time, causing Luffy pain because they used haki. But he still endured it, relying on the elastic mechanism of rubber. Luffy immediately exerted his strength to push Marcus Mars away. The opponent could not resist. As a result, they were pushed away by Luffy's group. According to their speculation, he wouldn't be able to return immediately, so they would take this opportunity to escape. Sanji didn't know where Usopp's group was. They should have landed in the sea by now. Atlas thought something had happened and had to fly to check. She knew York was watching her and Lilith, so she was afraid of becoming a burden to the Straw Hat Pirates. At the same time, Vega Punk's video continued to play, but the transmission was unstable, making it difficult to hear what he wanted to say clearly. At Luffy's location, suddenly many people fell from above. It turned out that Jupiter had previously spat them out from inside his stomach. Seeing this scene, Luffy laughed loudly, thinking it was a water fountain. Brogy knew the sea monster would come here, so he warned everyone to be careful. Immediately after, Jupiter used his giant mouth to suck everything into his stomach. Bonney also tried to cling to the ship, but couldn't maintain her Nika form. Fortunately, Sanji grabbed her hand, so she was safe. Dorry asked the crew to furl the sails and use the oars to change direction. Luffy rushed forward and delivered a powerful punch directly at the monster. Witnessing this scene, even the Marines couldn't understand what was happening. Warcury took advantage of Luffy being there and attacked the ship. He warned that the pig was very tough. If they collided, their ship would surely be crushed. Even Brogy and Dorry didn't know what to do in this situation. Luffy suddenly heard the Iron Giant call out, "Joyboy!" He had fully awakened. From under the sea, the Iron Giant delivered a punch that sent Warcury flying. Perhaps this was the right time for the Iron Giant to act, looking at its massive body. Luffy was extremely surprised. He always loved giant robots like that. This is Vega Punk's memory from 26 years ago. That day, a close friend came to him and begged for help. He wanted to research with Vega Punk the erased century that the government was hiding. This world had too many mysteries that needed to be uncovered. The research required in-depth knowledge from many fields, and no one was more suitable than a genius scientist like him. However, Vegapunk refused the invitation because he was currently working for the government and could not provide him with any data. He also reminded his friend that he was being targeted by the government, and the reason they still let Clover live was only to find and eliminate all the researchers around him. And Vegapunk advised his friend to stop and not delve into the past anymore. Clover recounted that many years ago, a person with the letter D in their name died right before his eyes, and that person was his own biological brother. This man's real name was Clu D. Clover, and to save his life, he always concealed his name. No one in this world deserved to die just because of their name. To find out why the government was hunting down people with the letter D in their names, he was forced to research the historical documents that were being erased. Hearing this, Vegapunk was very shocked, but could do nothing to help. He turned and left, saying, "Let's pretend I never heard anything." He advised Clover to be careful, and the other man loudly declared, "I will find the truth at all costs." The scene shifts to a few years later, when the genius scientist was still researching at Punk Hazard. That day, a colleague informed Vegapunk that the government was about to issue an extermination order on Ohara in the West Blue. That would certainly be a large-scale massacre. A few days later, Ohara was indeed completely wiped out, but a child escaped, and that girl was being hunted by the government with an extremely high bounty. Vegapunk then went to Ohara to lay wreaths for the dead. Standing from above, he saw books everywhere. Perhaps the researchers had time to hide. Remembering Clover, the genius scientist shed tears of sorrow for his friend. He believed that everyone died just to protect this massive archive for future generations. At this moment, Vegapunk's video was still playing. He spoke about how history always belongs to the victors, while the voices of the defeated are buried deep beneath the sea, unheard by anyone. But now, he would reveal all secrets for everyone in the world to hear. Robin in the room burst into tears as she recalled her past. The scene shifts to the Straw Hat Pirates' sunny ship. Zoro urged the helmsman to get the ship moving quickly. However, Lilith refused because their enemy was blocking their way. She knew this ship was equipped with a propulsion device that could launch it a kilometer. But if that monster slashed them, their flight path would be diverted, and the worst-case scenario could be that everyone would fall onto the island instead of landing safely in the sea. Just then, Atlas flew over and punched Lilith, knocking her unconscious. The remaining crew members were surprised, not understanding why the girl did that. Back below, Warcurry immediately recovered after being punched away by the Iron Giant. The Marines wondered what was happening. The Iron Giant called Luffy Joyboy, saying he was very happy to see him again. Luffy, completely bewildered by what the other party was saying, asked again who Joyboy was, but the Iron Giant did not answer. He advised Luffy to go ahead while he stayed behind to hold off the monsters. He said that Joyboy's enemy was also his enemy. "Finally, I get to fight for you again." The Gorosei were now trying to destroy the Iron Giant's body to stop Vegapunk's video. Sensing danger, the Iron Giant activated its combat mode. At the same time, Brogy and Dorry sailed the ship, taking Luffy's group away from the island. They asked why the Iron Giant was on their side. Luffy didn't know, saying that he wanted to protect someone named Joyboy. The Marine Vice Admirals ordered cannons to fire at the pirates. Vegapunk's story continued. He spoke of a war that happened 900 years ago, wishing he had more time to learn more. Hearing this, Warcurry became truly enraged and attacked the Iron Giant. Seizing the opportunity, Jupiter lunged forward to approach. Seeing this, the Iron Giant raised a hand, preparing to fire. Frankie and his two comrades were extremely excited at this sight. They thought the Iron Giant would blast away the monster, but that didn't happen. The weapon from 900 years ago was too old to function. Seizing the opportunity while Jupiter was biting the opponent's arm, Saturn immediately ran quickly towards Luffy. He easily jumped onto the ship, saying that he wouldn't let anyone escape. Back at Atlas, everyone asked why she attacked Lilith again. Atlas said nothing, only disconnecting from her friend. Then she asked everyone to prepare for takeoff, saying she would help hold off the monster. After saying that, Atlas immediately rushed to attack Nusjuro. Seeing this, Nami asked Jinbei to get the ship moving. Immediately after, one of Atlas's arms was severed, but she didn't stop, continuing to push Nusjuro elsewhere. The Sunny then launched, escaping the giant horse. Zoro told everyone to hold on tight, or they would fall. Usopp was scared, wondering if the ship had enough power to fly to the sea. Nusjuro then continued to slash Atlas. She didn't feel any pain and smiled, having completed her mission. After that, she self-destructed to hold off the enemy, helping the Straw Hat pirates escape. The huge explosion made those who witnessed it scream Atlas's name. Thanks to the explosion, the Sunny was pushed to the shore, but everyone was sad to have lost a friend. Inside, York was overjoyed that she could no longer sense Lilith and Atlas. Now, she was the only Vega Punk left in this world. The Gorosei were all targeting the Iron Giant. The scientist's video was talking about how Pirate King Gol D. Roger discovered secrets that the government was hiding. Jew Peter then bit off one of the Iron Giant's arms, but even without an arm, he showed no fear, believing this was the right time to use his secret weapon. On the ship, Saturn was targeting Bonney and Kuma. To protect them, Dorry and Brogy stepped forward to fight. Luffy reminded them that the spider legs were poisonous, so they shouldn't touch them. Bonney was tired after transforming into Nika, but she still tried to stand up to fight and protect her father. Once again, Bonney saw her future form. Luffy, seeing that she was about to transform, stepped in to block Saturn's attack. Bonney transformed into her freest form and declared that she would defeat the Gorosei. Luffy also supported her, telling her to defeat them all. Currently, Vega Punk was talking about a weapon that once submerged all continents, leading to the extinction of rare races. Among them were the Buccaneers, like Kuma, and the Lunarians, like King in Kaido's pirate crew. There was also Big Mom's daughter, who possessed 3 eyes. At this moment, the two Nikas fought together, enraging Saturn. He immediately attacked them, but they all dodged. Bonney was then assisted by Luffy in attacking the monster. She wanted to avenge her father and mother. It was Saturn who turned Kuma into a slave, and also the one who caused Ginny to contract the deadly disease. Bonney believes that gods truly exist, and heroes too. She cried when she learned that her parents were very happy when she was born. The image of Ginny happily hugging her daughter, sitting next to Kuma, appeared. They thanked Bonney for being born into the world. As if empowered, Bonney continued to follow Luffy's lead, creating a giant fist to attack. Seeing this, Luffy immediately rushed in to help. He knocked away all the annoying spider legs. A powerful punch in Nika's form was also unleashed, and not stopping there, Luffy also continuously punched the monster's body. The combined power of the two Nikas caused the opponent's body to explode into many pieces. Witnessing his daughter's victory, Kuma unexpectedly smiled. The Straw Hat Pirate's ship is free-falling into the sea. Witnessing this, Brogy and Dorry are extremely excited. Meanwhile, the crew members above, like Usopp, are praying for a safe landing. But the real danger is now coming from behind. Although Atlas sacrificed her life to buy time, she still couldn't stop Nusjuro. At this moment, Vega Punk is talking about how, before his death, Pirate King Roger said his treasure was hidden in the sea. He called on everyone to go find that treasure. This statement was not merely meant to encourage pirates, but it also carried a deeper meaning. The scene shifts to a certain sea, where Shanks's pirate crew is watching Vega Punk's video and looking sad. Their captain has also drunk himself unconscious on the spot. The pirate world is in extreme chaos at this moment, and the same goes for Buggy's base. The crew members are praising Buggy as a great captain, along with his great ambition to find the One Piece. The Marines have also received this news. They think if they can find the One Piece treasure first, The age of pirates will end. But if they act carelessly, it will lead to unpredictable consequences, and no one will be able to protect the people anymore. The genius scientist believes that the fate of the world will be handed to whoever holds the One Piece treasure, which also means that in the future, pirates will control the world. Vega Punk's statement shocked everyone everywhere. They feared their countries would also sink into the sea later. Meanwhile, the pirates are excited about what Vega Punk just said. They want to set sail to find the One Piece immediately. Even the criminals imprisoned in jail are interested in the statement that pirates will rule the world. The wardens try to turn off Vega Punk's broadcast, but fail. Back to Kobe, after hearing the statement from the genius scientist, he recalls an image of himself and Luffy at 17 years old. At that time, Luffy said that he would become the Pirate King, a title for the one who holds everything in the world. At that time, Kobe was extremely surprised, but now he wants to stop Luffy's dream of finding the One Piece. At Buggy's place, he is still being cheered on by his subordinates. They want their captain to rule the world. He then signals everyone to be silent and says, "I don't want a world ruled by me alone. It should be a world for all of us." Hearing this, everyone is moved. They all continue to cheer Buggy, saying they will go with him anywhere, even if it's hell. Hearing this, Buggy also seems happy, but immediately after, he is asked by Crocodile to sit down for an important conversation. At the same time, Captain Devon and Van Augur have contacted Teach to inform him that the pirate Caribou wants to meet. If they want, they can kill him right now. Hearing this, Caribou begs to speak directly. He is sure to provide important information that will satisfy Teach. Teach agrees after hearing him, but warns that if his information does not exceed expectations, he will be killed. Back to the Gorosei. To stop Vega Punk from speaking further, Warcury used his fangs to pierce through the Iron Giant's body. The broadcasting device inside was also damaged by the strong impact. Just as Vega Punk said something, the video stopped completely, which shocked people all over the world. They were eagerly awaiting what this scientist was about to announce. Everyone implicitly understood that something bad had happened. The Iron Giant was defeated. Only then did the Gorosei feel at ease because the broadcast had stopped completely. Their next target is the pirates trying to escape. Saturn, despite being beaten to a pulp by Bonney and Luffy, can still recover. Above, Nusjuro is gradually approaching the Straw Hat Pirates' sunny ship. Nami and Usopp are very afraid of that giant monster. They ask Zoro to do something to stop the enemy from approaching. He also stood ready to fight. The Iron Giant apologized to Joyboy for not being able to help him. Luffy, behind him, also asked if he was okay. He thought the Iron Giant was mistaking him for someone else because Luffy's current appearance was very similar to his old friends. The Iron Giant looked sad that he couldn't help Joyboy become king, then asked what Luffy's name was. He replied, "I am Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will become the king of the pirates." Hearing the D in Luffy's name, the Iron Giant laughed and immediately stood up to continue fighting. Meanwhile, the Gorosei were now targeting Brogy and Dorry's pirate ship. The giant pig also intended to trample the enemy in front of him, but the Iron Giant activated the secret weapon hidden in his body. From his damaged arm, he pulled out a knotted rope, and immediately that knot was untied. Along with that, a huge amount of energy was released throughout the world, and all the marine soldiers were knocked unconscious. Luffy realized this was Conqueror's Haki, and the Iron Giant thanked Luffy for helping him recall old memories. Therefore, he didn't want Luffy to die here, and Conqueror's Haki continued to erupt, defeating all of Luffy's enemies. Even the Marine Vice Admirals couldn't withstand it, and collapsed. Sanji and Frankie stood there wondering who possessed such immense Haki power. A power so strong that it caused the Gorosei pain. They couldn't maintain their monster forms, and 3 of them were sent back to the Holy Land, unable to do anything. The head of the world government, known as also showed anger, realizing that the conqueror's haki belonged to Joyboy. The Straw Hat Pirates' ship then landed safely in the sea, and Luffy was relieved to see his crew unharmed. Usopp and Chopper cried tears of joy, praising Jinbei as the best helmsman. Nami breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked where the giant monsters had gone, and Luffy said he didn't know either. Dorry and Brogy were also shocked that the Iron Giant could use haki, even though all the crew members were safe. However, Edison and Atlas had to sacrifice themselves to protect them. This made everyone sad. Currently, only Saturn remains on the island, and after being attacked by Conqueror's haki, he appears extremely exhausted. Saturn approached the Iron Giant to find out why it could use haki. At this moment, old memories emerged. He was called Emmet by Joyboy, and that year his friend had predicted that he would die. So he sealed his haki power into Emmet's body, because even if he died, the Iron Giant would still exist. At the same time, he instructed him that whenever his life was in danger, or he wanted to save someone's life, he should untie the knot within him. Joyboy said he would save him even if he himself died. Emmet was very happy to hear this, because even if Joyboy died, he would still exist within this body. And so, he would no longer feel lonely. After recalling this memory, the Iron Giant also stopped functioning. Following the eruption of Joyboy's haki, the entire Marine Force and the Gorosei collapsed, rendering them unable to pursue the pirates any further. Everyone shouted and cheered for this victory. To be safe, Dorry asked Luffy where those giant monsters had disappeared to, but Luffy just seemed excited about the Iron Giant's conqueror's haki. Luffy praised that power as amazing for knocking out all the marines and monsters in the blink of an eye. Receiving this news, Brogy and Dorry finally felt relieved enough to sail their ship away from the danger zone. They estimated that the Iron Giant's haki was even stronger than Shanks. Meanwhile, on the marine ship, Seraphim S. Snake was calling on the soldiers to set her free. She wanted to chase after Luffy before he could escape. However, upon hearing Luffy's words of gratitude towards the Iron Giant, she felt happy that her beloved was safe. The Straw Hat captain sent his thanks to Emmet and bid him farewell. Just like that, the captains of the 2 pirate crews sailed out to sea while the enemy was unconscious. Their destination was Elbaf, the homeland of the giants. Nami and Brook were overjoyed to see Luffy return, but immediately after, he collapsed from exhaustion and fell from the sky. Chopper and Usopp ran to greet their 2 masters. Usopp said he missed Dorry and Brogy very much. The giant warrior pirates asked the Straw Hats to keep up closely as they were about to speed up. Immediately, Jinbei set the ship to full speed to follow. Finally, Luffy and his crew escaped the world government's encirclement. At the same time in the sky, journalists working at Morgan's headquarters were brainstorming how to write great articles for the coming days. The recent news they received was all shocking. Morgan's ordered his subordinates to create sensational headlines about a terrible future for this world, based on what Vega Punk had previously announced. Hearing this, Vivi called him a scumbag for trying to use his articles to cause panic among the people. Morgan's pointed straight at her face, demanding she stay out of his business, and even threatened to expose Vivi's location since the government was currently hunting her. However, Vivi was not afraid. She called Morgan's a fraud, claiming that smart people would not be fooled by his lying articles. Seeing them argue so intensely, everyone had to intervene. Morgan's was furious, but could do nothing. He thought about the world sinking into the sea and felt delighted. Since he is a bird, it felt as if his era was approaching. The journalists planned to release shocking articles such as Trafalgar Law's battle against Blackbeard, the battle between Shanks and Kid, and the news that Luffy had murdered Vega Punk. The scene shifts to Sentomaru, who was using a small boat to leave the island. On the marine battleship, Kizaru looked sadly at what remained after the battle. The damage to the Marines was immense. At Marine headquarters, Fleet Admiral Akainu was also contacting them to ask what happened. He demanded someone explain the situation, but no one picked up, making him think everyone was dead. Kizaru then picked up the phone, stating that everyone was currently unconscious, and according to his calculations, it would be a long time before they woke up. Hearing this, Akainu was furious, asking if Saint Saturn was safe and if the fugitives had been caught. Kizaru remained silent. Akainu accused Kizaru of slacking off. This accusation touched the Admiral's current pain. He screamed in tears, asking his colleague on the other end if he had ever killed his best friend with his own hands. Kizaru completely lost his composure, shouting for Akainu to come and see the situation for himself, calling him a damn brat. Hearing his colleagues weeping, Akainu understood the gravity of the situation and apologized. Old memories resurfaced. The first time Kizaru met Vega Punk, he was surprised by the scientist's large head. Since that day, they began working together. The genius scientist showed his friend the blueprints for Egghead Island. Vega Punk affirmed he would create the future of 500 years later and asked for Kizaru's help. Thus, in the following times, the Admiral always came to assist Sentomaru and Vega Punk in completing the Island of Dreams. Those were perhaps their happiest days, but today he was forced to kill his best friend. Back to Sanji, he looked at Vega Punk's corpse and wondered what his previous words meant. It turned out that when they went to rescue Bonney, Vega Punk had asked everyone to leave him behind and not save him. He wanted to die there. Returning to the time before, Shaka accidentally discovered something unusual and reported it to Vega Punk. The energy usage for the Seraphim was increasing. Pythagoras realized someone had falsified the data, indicating that someone was stealing the mother flame. All parameters were sophisticatedly faked, making them unable to realize it sooner. Initially, they thought Lilith was the thief, but since the three in the room had alibis, they had to investigate the other four. A few days later, Pythagoras revealed the culprit was York. Her images on the surveillance cameras were all fake. They discovered a conversation between York and the Gorosei, revealing Vega Punk's research on the Void Century. Furthermore, the Lulusia Kingdom had been completely destroyed. Vega Punk realized the stolen energy was the cause. The world government had used an ancient weapon to wipe out Lulusia. He blamed himself for creating the Mother Flame, leading to York's betrayal. Knowing he would be eliminated by the government, Shaka urged Vega Punk to flee. However, he refused, knowing it was impossible. At the very least, he wanted his death not to be meaningless. Vega Punk wanted to reveal secrets to the whole world. He apologized to Shaka and Pythagoras for implicating them, but both accepted the sacrifice because we are one. In the following days, Vega Punk continued to act as if he didn't know about York's betrayal. The three of them secretly recorded a message for the world and hid the broadcast device inside the Iron Giant, Amet. To prevent York from finding out, they erased part of their memories regarding York's betrayal. However, Vega Punk left a note to remind himself after the memory wipe. Trust in yourself and be ready to die. That was why he asked Sanji not to save him, as his death would trigger an event helping their side achieve victory. Back to the present on the sea, the giant pirate crew was drinking and celebrating. Remembering Vega Punk's final words, Sanji felt a wave of sadness. Vega Punk had entrusted his faith to the Straw Hats, hoping they would claim the One Piece, because they were the ones who deserved it. After escaping the pursuit of the world government and the Gorosei, the members of the Straw Hat crew did not seem happy at all. According to Frankie, the reason for Luffy's depression was Vega Punk's death. They should have been able to throw a celebration party after successfully escaping. They had promised that scientist they would get him off Egghead, but that mission had failed. Frankie felt frustrated. He thought fighting the Gorosei and Admiral Kizaru was impossible. Not to mention the Navy had support from the Seraphim and many battleships. The fact that the whole group could escape that hellish island was already a miracle. Back on Egghead Island, after being knocked unconscious by Joyboy's hockey, the Navy soldiers still hadn't woken up. Luchi and Kaku returned to the ship with bodies full of injuries. When subordinates asked where Stussy was, Luchi replied that he had killed her. Inside the meeting room, Saturn was telling the vice admirals about securing the necessary resources. These included York, Vega Punk's power plant, and most importantly, the Mother Flame. However, they had let Luffy and Bonney escape. Even with 9 vice admirals present, they couldn't do anything. They wanted permission to chase the Straw Hat pirates to Elbaf. However, Saturn objected. He thought the real failure was Vega Punk's broadcast. He himself had never imagined what terrible things would happen if that broadcast wasn't stopped. Furthermore, the Iron Giant had helped the pirates escape. About 200 years ago, when Emmet was defeated, the world government originally wanted to destroy the Iron Giant. However, it was Saturn who hid it and kept it for research, believing that research on the Iron Giant would bring benefits to the military. Yet since then, Emmet hadn't activated even once. But today, the Iron Giant actually saved Luffy. At this moment, a vice admiral spoke up asking about this failure. He wanted to know if Vega Punk's words were true. That question made Saturn furious. He immediately used hockey to punish him, knocking the vice admiral unconscious on the spot. Meanwhile, at York's location, she realized something was unusual and ran to check the Cloud Island. The cloud-making factory was operating at full capacity. York realized the person doing this was Edison. She used a gun to shoot at the Cloud Island, but couldn't stop it from flying up. Meanwhile, at the Holy Land, Mary Joyce, the people living there were panicking over Vega Punk's words. Although the world sinking into the sea wouldn't affect this place, food would run out. Currently, their food stores were completely empty. Many had to starve, and they all appeared angry, blaming the commoners and wanting to punish them unreasonably. At the Gorosei's room of authority, a surprise guest arrived to meet the 4 leaders. Garling said he had just received orders. Hearing his tone, the other 4 felt annoyed. They demanded Garling maintain proper etiquette, as they were the leaders. But the old man said that from now on, Vega Punk York would be under his direct command, and he himself had been assigned the position of warrior god of science and defense. This was the role Saturn was holding, so the other 4 understood that Garling was the new member of the Gorosei. At the same time, something extremely terrible happened to Saturn. His body started feeling pain, and he screamed. The vice admirals witnessing this didn't understand what was happening. His aged body began to burn with blue flames. He realized this was punishment from Lord Imu, and begged. A red eye appeared, questioning Saturn why he let Joyboy escape. Before he could answer, his body exploded. The vice admirals were blown away. They couldn't believe their eyes as Saturn's body was now just a dry skeleton. The scene shifts to Edison. He wasn't dead, but had safely guided the Cloud Island away from Egghead. Surprisingly, the other versions of Vega Punk, despite being dead, still retained their memories. Everyone thought Vega Punk was dead, so now Edison and the other versions could travel the world freely. To keep memories of everyone, he attached their body parts to himself. The result was this new form. Atlas laughed because Edison used her left arm and Pythagoras's right arm, while the torso was taken from Shaka. The scene shifts to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. The people here were also fearing the future where the world sinks into the sea. They discussed the ancient weapons that caused a great war in the past. The person who obtains the One Piece will become the Pirate King and possess the power of the ancient weapons once again. Their mission is not to let that happen. From this, Sabo also understood why the celestial dragons live in the Holy Land, Mary Joyce. Furthermore, They used slaves to build massive structures over the past few centuries. This proves that what Vega Punk said is the truth, and the world government had prepared for the world sinking long ago. Dragon thought he must quickly resolve matters. Soon people would begin fighting over safe lands that the seawater cannot reach. Back on the giant pirate's ship, thanks to Chopper's care, Lilith woke up. Sanji immediately ran over to check her condition. At that moment, Lilith's earpiece transmitted a sound. It was her friends inside Edison's body. Seeing her surprised look, Sanji explained they were currently in a giant's room, so everything was huge. He also broke the sad news that they couldn't save the other Vegapunks besides her. Atlas was the one who knocked Lilith out. According to Nami, that was a good way to save her life. Lilith said she just received a notification about everything, so they didn't need to worry. The girl then cried loudly, but immediately after appeared happy and demanded something to eat. Chopper suggested eating the fruit available on the table. Lilith climbed down deep in thought. Her head was no longer connected to York, so she wouldn't be tracked. Brook then told her that Luffy was acting very sad after Vegapunk's death. He was eating while shedding tears out of remorse, talking about having promised Vegapunk to get him off the island safely, but failing to do so. Chopper said his captain was deeply mentally hurt, to the point of not eating meat and only eating fruit. Lilith laughed upon hearing that and announced good news. Actually, the deaths of the other Vegapunks were only death by their definition. In reality, they still existed inside Edison's head. Upon learning they were all alive, the other members were astonished. Brook thought they had turned into ghosts and felt scared. Sanji thought a skeleton like him shouldn't be afraid of ghosts. Luffy, upon knowing Vegapunk still existed, became overjoyed. Chopper also cried tears of joy. Immediately, Luffy rushed out to where the giants were drinking and thanked everyone for their help. Brogy and Dorry asked their friend if he wanted to party. This time, Luffy was no longer sad, so he agreed. Seeing everyone so happy, Usopp called Zoro and the others onto the giant's ship to drink. Seeing a large piece of meat in front of them, Bonney, Chopper, and Luffy immediately jumped in to eat. The giants promised that when they arrived at Elbaf, they would treat them to even more delicious food. Robin had also recovered by now. Chopper ran to her and was hugged by Robin. She said if they went to Elbaf, she might meet Saul. This was her wish. The giants were talking about how the person who finds the One Piece will rule the world. They wondered who would become the Pirate King. Luffy, upon hearing this, claimed he would become the Pirate King. He jumped up holding a cup of alcohol and declared, "Even if the giant pirates become my enemies, I will still become the Pirate King." Just like that, all Straw Hat members clinked glasses to celebrate. Bonney also recalled the image of Kuma. After so many incidents, father and daughter could finally be together. She saw her father's face smiling contentedly and felt very happy. This was Kuma's greatest wish when he was still human. He wanted to set sail with his daughter just like this. And so, their ship proceeded toward the homeland of the giants.